Chapter 361 New Quest. Neo stared at the colossal doors of the mansion. They towered over him. He took a few steps forward before turning back. "You are not coming in?" he asked. "No one but the bloodline of monarch is allowed to enter the palace, Prince," Veldora replied. Neo nodded. He pushed the doors of the palace. They groaned in protest, the grating noise reverberating like a dying beast. As the doors parted, a gust of icy air surged out from the palace, slamming into Neo. He frowned as the cold bit into his skin. His steps echoed loudly as he entered. The dim corridors stretched endlessly before him. Each hallway was lined with gigantic statues of warriors. The only noise came from Neo's footsteps and the faint whistle of wind seeping through windows. Neo's heart thumped faster as he approached the door at the corridor's end. He must be behind this, Neo thought. His hand hovered over the door. He had never met Hades, not even during the Shadow Trial. He had seen his father, Hades' reincarnation, when he was a child, but not Hades. This would be their first meeting. Here goes nothing. Neo steadied his racing heart, took a deep breath, and pushed the doors open. Inside, a grand hall stretched before him. Pillars of obsidian soared to the ceiling, and the walls were lined with paintings depicting ancient battles and conquests. A massive chandelier of dark crystals hung above, casting a haunting glow over the room. At the far end of the hall sat a man on a black throne carved from bones and obsidian. He was breathtakingly handsome. His hair was black as midnight, cascading over his shoulders, and his eyes glowed the color of blood. His presence was suffocating. His dragon-like hand rested casually under his chin, as if he had been expecting Neo. "Welcome, my son," the man said. Neo's expression darkened. He clenched his fists as rage bubbled within him. Slowly, he unsheathed Obidus from its scabbard. "What are you doing, Neo?" the man asked. "I'll give you 10 seconds. Neo's aura erupted like a storm, flooding the hall with a pressure that made the air tremble. "Tell me who you are and where Dad is." The man's brows furrowed. "What are you saying? I am your dad. Time's up." Neo bolted forward. In an instant, he was before the man, his sword drawn back, ready to strike. Divine swordsmanship second form. Sabama Geishi. Neo's blade flashed through the air, aiming for the man's neck. The man smiled. A cold, knowing smile, and raised a single finger. The blade stopped mid-swing, frozen as though an invisible force held it in place. The man's smile deepened. "Why do you think I'm not Hades?" Neo swiftly retreated when his attack failed. He maintained his stance, Obidus gleaming in his hand. The air between them grew heavier, as if the very space trembled under the man's presence. Neo had the blessings of his parents. Blessings worked thanks to intent, and Neo seen the intent of Hades and Persephone. "Your intent is completely different from Dad." Neo glared. "Who are you?" "Ahahaha." The man's laughter echoed like thunder, shaking the hall. His booming voice bounced off the pillars, sending chills down Neo's spine. He stood up from the throne. The shadows around him twisted unnaturally as his appearance began to shift. His dragon-like claws morphed into human hands. His obsidian black hair shortened to a sharp crop, and his blood-red eyes turned a brilliant gold. His aura remained suffocating, even as his monstrous features gave way to a human visage. "Who am I?" The man's golden eyes glowed with amusement as he slung a massive sword over his shoulder. He gazed at Neo with a condescending smirk. "Why don't you make me answer you? If it's a beating you want, then fine." A translucent screen materialized in front of Neo. Quest. Survive for 10 seconds against. Reward. Absolute Chaos World Core Condensation Technique. Neo's frowned as he understood the meaning behind the words. Alarms suddenly blared in his mind. His instincts screamed at him to escape. For the first time in ages, he felt fear. "Ho ho, what are you looking at?" Status screen. The man's mocking voice came from behind Neo. Neo's blood froze. There was no time to react. The man's sword flashed like a streak of lightning. Neo barely managed to raise his blade in defense. The weapons clashed with a deafening clang that sent shockwaves rippling around them. Neo's body was hurled like a ragdoll, crashing into the black stone wall with bone-shattering force. Cracks spider-webbed across the wall, and dust rained down in thick clouds. "This place is quite small," the man muttered, scratching his patchy beard. "Let's make it bigger." He snapped his fingers. The world. A ripple of energy spread outward. Goosebumps crawled over Neo's skin as he felt the sheer power behind those two words formed from intent. The room shifted before his eyes. The space inside the hall expanded exponentially, stretching far beyond what should have been possible. The ceiling rose higher and higher until it disappeared into an endless void. The walls stretched outward, becoming so distant they were no longer visible. It was as if the hall had transformed into an entire planet, or perhaps something even larger. Neo looked around in disbelief. Damn, how long are you going to think for? The man's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. Neo's head whipped toward the source, only to find the man standing right in front of him. Since the hall had expanded, the distance between them should have grown to hundreds of thousands of kilometers. And yet, the man had covered the unimaginable distance in an instant. Start moving, will you? Or are you too afraid to fight back? The space around Neo had been frozen solid. He couldn't move even if he wanted. However, divine swordsmanship 8th form. Kami no Shin. Nice move, but it's too slow. Neo's sword technique failed to fully activate. No, it hadn't failed. It was in the process of activating. The activation speed was just very, very slow. He is slowing down my time, Neo realized. The man wasn't freezing Neo directly, he was simply slowed Neo's time to the point Neo's body appeared frozen. What now, Neo? Going to give up? The man asked mockingly, leaning forward. His golden eyes gleamed with amusement as he looked Neo directly in the eye. Neo clenched his jaw. His aura began to flicker and flare. Slowly, painfully, his body started to move again. It made him feel every as if he liked trying to hold up an ocean. The man's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but he quickly masked it with a smirk. I had heard Heavenbreakers were powerful, but I guess I was wrong. You are pretty weak. Neo ignored the taunts, focusing entirely on freeing himself. His aura flared once more, brighter this time. Wisps of white energy began to materialize around him. Neo's body trembled as he generated world energy. The endless power started to break his body, as cracks appeared on his skin. Don't bother, the man said. It's not going to work. It was clear the man was enjoying this. He stood back, his expression relaxed, his words dripping with mockery. Hey, you fucking bitch, Neo spat as he finally managed to move his mouth. Catch this. The corner of the man's mouth twitched, but before he could react, Neo opened his shadow space. Without warning, a massive landmass, the entire Earth, suddenly appeared above them. The colossal chunk of rock and soil hurtled downward. Its sheer size blotted out the sky. When it struck the ground, the impact was cataclysmic. A deafening explosion tore through the air, shaking the very fabric of the space they stood in. Magma erupted violently from the fractured ground, glowing rivers of molten rock flowing through the cracks. Dust and debris filled the air, shrouding the battlefield in a dense, suffocating fog. Stones and rubble flew in every direction, smashing into the invisible boundaries of the hall. The sound of constant sonic booms echoed endlessly. For a brief moment, the man loosened his hold over Neo's time, caught off guard by the sudden attack. Cough, cough. Neo woke up to find his body half crushed under the wreckage of a massive mountain. His limbs were trapped, and blood stained his clothes. He activated his blessing and healed himself. With a roar, he unleashed his aura, shattering the mountain above him into countless fragments. The debris scattered in all directions, and Neo climbed to his feet. His breaths were heavy and labored. Fuck. He looked around the desolate battlefield. The once pristine hall was now a wasteland. The pillars had crumbled, the floor was torn apart, and the ceiling was no longer visible through the swirling smoke and ash. Why the fuck are we fighting him now? I thought he was your friend. The voice of the maggot resting on Neo's shoulder rang out. Friend. Neo muttered, wiping blood from his mouth. I've never met that man in my life before. He looked at his status screen. Time remaining until the completion of quest. 07 seconds. The whole time and space are twisted in this place. Get moving, bitch, and help me, the maggots shouted. That bastard is pretty fucking angry. I know. Neo dashed forward. He could see hundreds of thousand-eyed pillars looking in one direction. The man must be there. Countless maggots rushed along with Neo. It feels weird fighting with Valkyria, Neo thought. Do you have any idea who he is? Neo asked as he kept running. He covered thousands of meters with each step, but the man was still quite far away. It's him. Valkyria muttered, panic seeping into her voice. The Stage 5 god who was protecting the world core. Chapter 362 Challenging the Insurmountable. He was the one protecting the world core when you attacked Earth. Neo asked, surprised. Yes. That means, he is on our side. Not after you revealed me to him, fucker. Before Neo could say anything, he saw the man. He was surrounded by hundreds of thousand-eyed pillars. They rained him with countless mental attacks. Maggots the size of fists writhed and crawled as they tried to tear his skin apart. Not a single attack touched the man. It was as if they were stopped by an invisible barrier surrounding his body. The man turned to Neo, his smile gone. Why are you working with an angel of an outer? I don't see the need to answer you. I asked you a question, Neo Hargraves. His voice exploded like a thunderclap, creating shockwaves. The wreckages of earth, broken chunks of stone, shattered steel, and dying flames, were scattered further by the force. The thousand-eyed pillars and the writhing maggots burst apart like overfilled balloons. Neo felt as if he were standing in the eye of a hurricane. His skin began to peel in thin, stinging strips, and the man's enormous pressure bore down on him like a mountain. Answer me. In an instant, the man appeared before Neo. His speed was overwhelming. Before Neo could react, the man's greatsword pierced through his chest, pinning him to the cracked, blood-soaked ground. You want an answer? Neo asked. Blood bubbled from his lips as he coughed violently. Still, he grinned. Then make me answer you. The man's anger momentarily dissipated when Neo used his words against him. He raised his sword to strike again when suddenly Neo's body dissolved into shimmering particles of light. Intent. The man muttered, his brows furrowing in disbelief. He made a physical clone with intent already. Surprised already. The man's head whipped around at the sound of Neo's voice. Hundreds of Neo's clones surrounded him. You can make so many clones? The man asked. Neo shrugged, maintaining his silence. He could create only one clone if it was to be as strong as himself. On the other hand, he could create countless weaker ones. What are you trying to do? The man asked. Did you forget what I said? The clones spoke in unison. If you want an answer, then make me answer you. As soon as Neo uttered those words, a screen appeared before his eyes. Hidden conditions met. Quest. Survive. Will be upgraded to Quest, challenging the insurmountable. Details. Successfully land an attack on. Reward. Absolute Chaos World Core Condensation Technique. Will be upgraded to Primordial World Core Condensation Technique. There was no time to read the screens. The clones rushed at the man from all sides. Seeing their fervor, the man's anger dissipated, replaced by a resounding laugh that echoed across the wasteland. Shockwaves created by his laughter tore through the air, killing several clones instantly. Their forms disintegrated like dust in the wind. That way of talking, you really are that bastard's son. You aren't the one to talk, Duke Bale. Countless sword attacks flashed from every direction. Grinning, Bale gripped his massive sword with both hands. His muscles tensed, and an immense aura exploded from his body like a tidal wave. The force alone caused the cracked earth to split further, sending tremors through the battlefield. His slash tore apart everything around him in a blinding arc of destruction. How did you know who I was? Bale asked, his voice calm but laced with curiosity as another wave of clones appeared. Your intent is the same as the all-seeing eye that hangs in the sky. The new wave of clones rushed at Bale again. Valkyria, use mental attacks on me. Neo called out. Okay. Only a few maggots survived Bale's devastating attacks. Those that remained writhed grotesquely. Their forms shifted and expanded. They began transforming into gigantic thousand-eyed pillars. Mouths appeared on the pillars, and they began to vomit an endless swarm of maggots. The ground became a seething carpet of writhing insects as they surged forward. The thousand-eyed pillars turned their gaze toward Neo. An intense headache pounded against his skull, as Valkyria used her mental attacks. Is that supposed to be an attack? Bale asked. Instead of answering, Neo activated Necrotic Touch. The skill had reached peak mastery long ago, and its power was absolute. Neo grabbed at the air itself. The atmosphere began to rot, decaying visibly as tendrils of necrosis spread outward. Anything the rotting air touched began to dissolve. Wreckages, space, time, life. Nothing was spared. Neo unleashed Dawn of Despair and Death Elemental after Necrotic Touch. The world around Bale was plunged into impenetrable darkness. The light was devoured, leaving an oppressive void that suffocated the senses. For a brief moment, giant bolts of condensed red lightning erupted in the darkness, illuminating the scene in blinding flashes. The harsh light revealed Bale's figure, standing unharmed amidst the attacks. Not bad, Bale mused. No attack touched his body. The barrier surrounding him remained impregnable. He clenched his fist, and the space around him warped. It crushed Neo's clones and their attacks effortlessly. The distorted space around Bale swallowed them without resistance. Bale was about to taunt Neo when suddenly he felt something grabbing his leg. A clone held him. Only the upper half of its body had survived Bale's devastating attack. Its form was barely holding together. Instead of tending to its wounds, the clone used empathetic bond skill. A faint, pulsing glow emanated from it as it transferred the rage and pain it was feeling directly into Bale's mind. So this was why you told that filthy thing to use the mental attack on you. So that you could transfer that attack to me? Bale asked. But it doesn't. I know it doesn't work on you. Neo suddenly appeared before Bale while his attention was momentarily divided. Neo's body was covered in cracks. However, something felt off. Bale hadn't injured him to that extent. Was it due to world energy? Bale thought. He frowned when he couldn't sense any world energy within Neo's body. It took him a moment to realize Neo had transferred all of his world energy into his sword. By the time Bale noticed, the sword in Neo's hand glowed with an unearthly brilliance. Divine Swordsmanship 7th Form, Tenraisen. The world was engulfed in a blinding flash of light. The brilliance was so intense that it consumed everything, casting stark, surreal shadows across the ruins. Moments later, the flash disappeared, along with the darkness created by Black Dawn of Despair spell. Neo, bloodied and battered, lay unconscious on the cold ground. His body was limp and his chest rose and fell faintly with shallow breaths. Too bad, Neo. You lost, Bale said with a smirk. Now it's time for you to wake up and answer me. Bale crouched. He raised his hand, ready to slap Neo awake. He suddenly froze mid-motion. His eyes narrowed as he looked down at his abdomen. A faint, line-shaped dirt mark stained his shirt. It was subtle but it was there. His attack reached my body. Bale muttered in disbelief. Bale was a stage 5 god, while Neo's strength was only that of a stage -1 god. Chapter 363 World Core Condensation Technique. Their current fight was like an awakened demigod trying to challenge an exalted demigod. It was a fight where let alone victory, even inflicting damage was impossible for Neo. And yet, Neo managed to do the impossible. Heavenbreakers really are monsters, Bale said with a smirk, shaking his head in grudging admiration. He decided to let Neo rest. With a casual snap of his fingers, the massive hall reverted to its original pristine state. The towering walls and ornate pillars reappeared as if they had never been damaged. The wreckage of the earth vanished entirely, leaving behind only silence. Only a single maggot had survived. Hello, sir, Velkaria spoke while sweating profusely. Sir, Bale scoffed. The last time we met, you were laughing over my dying body. That was a different timeline's me, sir. It wasn't me. Velkaria lied without a second thought. Velkaria wanted to cry. She knew all too well that time users like Bale could see previous timelines through fragmented dreams. However, the chances of those dreams occurring were minuscule, and they happened randomly. Yet, of all people, Bale, the one person she wished would never remember her past actions, was the one who did. Follow me and tell me everything that is happening, Bale commanded. He carried Neo's unconscious body through the palace. Velkaria, with only one maggot remaining, followed closely behind. She dared not disobey Bale and spilled everything. Bale entered an opulent bedchamber. Its walls were adorned with murals depicting ancient battles. A massive canopy bed stood in the center, draped in crimson and gold fabrics. Bale gently placed Neo's body on the soft mattress. His movements were surprisingly careful for someone who was the cause of Neo's broken body. Velkaria lingered near the doorway. Her gaze darted nervously between Bale and Neo. Neo woke up a few hours later. Driven by habits, he instantly activated his blessing and life element at full throttle. A soothing green light enveloped him, mending his broken body with remarkable speed. The cracks in his skin disappeared, and his breathing evened out as his injuries healed completely. The princess is finally awake, Bale muttered, closing the book he had been reading. He sat in a sturdy chair next to the bed. His greatsword rested against the wall behind him. Neo sat up, rubbing his temples. His gaze fell on Bale, and his expression turned sour. How do you feel? Bale asked with undertone of mockery. I feel like shit, Neo replied bluntly. He glanced down at his hands and clenched his fists in anger. Heavenbreaker my ass. He toyed with me and I couldn't do anything. Bale could have killed him, or done far worse, if he'd had any intention to. Neo was too weak to protect himself. He survived only because Bale had no intention of harming him. His train of thoughts were broke when a screen abruptly flashed before his eyes. Quest. Challenging the insurmountable. Completed. Reward. Primordial World Core Condensation Technique. Influx of information appeared in his mind. The Absolute Chaos World Core Condensation Technique, his previous reward, would have allowed him to form a world core with an affinity to the chaos element. Chaos was another name for corrupted death element. It was an incredibly powerful. However, the primordial world core condensation technique was far superior. It technique allowed him to form a world core with an affinity to all of his elements, not just corrupted death. The reward meant that his attack had landed on Baal's body. So my last attack succeeded. Neo's thoughts churned. During his final strike, he had tried to create and use sword intent. He thought he had failed. It seemed he had thought wrong. So that was sword intent, or at least close to it. His primogenitor slots was still locked. Neo hadn't finished the modifications required for perfecting the creation of sword intent. What I can use now is an incomplete sword intent, and it was able to damage a stage 5 god. Neo's hands trembled slightly as his heart began to race with excitement. How powerful will the complete sword intent be? Neo couldn't help but let out a small grin. He knew he hadn't actually hurt Baal, only managed to land an attack. That, too, was because Baal had underestimated him. Yet, what he had done was a feat that no one of his rank should have been capable of achieving. I want to create sword intent as soon as possible, Neo thought excitedly. He was growing stronger. This was the feeling he loved. Hello. Baal leaned closer. He waved his hand dramatically in front of Neo's face. Calling princess from the underworld, can you hear me? I can hear you perfectly fine, and you don't need to wave your hand like that. Neo's tone was flat as he pointed at his own eyes. I'm blind. Baal paused for a moment before flashing a wider grin. That's why I waved my hand in front of your eyes. Baal leaned back in his chair with a laugh. Neo stared at him with a deadpan expression before opening his mouth. You can use sword intent, right? Can you teach it to me? He asked, instead of responding to Baal's taunts. I don't want to. Why? Why should I teach you? Not everyone wants to kiss your ass just because you're the underworld's heir. Neo's lips twitched at the retort. So you do realize I'm the underworld's heir, and you work for my dad, but you won't listen to me. He didn't voice his thoughts. There was no point. He understood Baal wouldn't care even if he used Hades' name. How did a lunatic like you become the first Grim Reaper to serve my dad? He asked, exasperated. Hey, that's insulting, Baal muttered, crossing his arms as a faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. The only reason I'm the Grim Reaper and he's the monarch, and it's not vice versa, is because I lost the fight when we were young. Otherwise, I would have been the monarch of the underworld. But you did lose, right? Neo asked, piecing the clues from Baal's words. Anyway, what's my dad's rank? I'm curious about it. Since the underworld manages souls from multiple worlds, he must be quite strong as the ruler of the underworld. Chapter 364 Find the current reincarnations of your parents. That he was. And what's with that question? I'm strong too. I was your dad's rivals. So he was a stage 5 god like you? Neo probed, narrowing his eyes. He might have surpassed me a bit when we were young, Baal admitted reluctantly, averting his gaze. How much is a bit? Quote. Grand Duke Baal, how much is a bit? A bit is a bit, Baal replied gruffly. Neo gave Baal a deadpan stare. Baal shifted in his chair and coughed. He waved a hand dismissively and quickly changed the topic. I heard about your shadow trial from this insect. A sudden movement caught Neo's attention as Velkaria peeked from behind the furniture. My name is Velkaria. What? Baal's glare shot toward her. I apologize for disturbing you. Please continue your talk. Velkaria yelped as Baal's sharp eyes bore into her. She immediately ducked further behind the furniture. What about my shadow trial? Neo asked. Baal stared at him for a few seconds before standing up. Without a word, he moved closer to Neo and, much to Neo's surprise, gently patted his head. Good work. I'm proud of you, Baal said. Neo's expression froze in disbelief. What are you doing? Praising you. Which is one of my jobs as your guardian, Baal replied with a smirk, as if his answer was obvious. A guardian who I'm meeting for the first time, and who almost killed me a few seconds ago. Did the definition of guardian change while I was away? This little. Baal's smirk twitched. He took a deep breath and sighed, shaking his head in mild frustration. This little. Baal's smirk twitched. He took a deep breath and sighed, shaking his head in mild frustration. The tension between them was broken, and the air seemed lighter. I couldn't leave the palace. My job is to protect the world's core. Even a single moment of negligence can lead to the destruction of the world core, Baal explained. Even a single moment. Neo raised an eyebrow. Yes. There are outer gods, monsters that lurk in the underworld, cultists, enemies from other worlds. There's no telling who might teleport here and when. Bale glanced toward the empty expanse outside the window. This is why I could never leave the palace. I see, Neo murmured. He could sense that Bale didn't want to dive deeper into this conversation, but there were things Neo needed to know. Where are Mom and Dad? Bale froze. He had hoped Neo wouldn't ask the question. Turning around, Bale slowly walked to the chair near the far corner of the room. He sat down, leaning back, his gaze fixed on the ceiling as if searching for answers there. Silence. The moments stretched. Finally, Bale spoke. They died a few years ago in the world of the living and have now reincarnated. And why are they reincarnating? Bale lowered his head, locking eyes with Neo. The cursed blood of your family. He paused before he added, death would never let you for rest. Where are they? Now, I don't know. Bale shook his head. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by a solemn expression. What's the curse of my bloodline? Neo asked. He had no intention of stopping until he found the answers he had been waiting for since ages. The original 4. Your parents and you 2 brothers will reincarnate every time you die, Bale said. Your parents are always together. It's random for you 2 brothers to be with them though. Most of the time, you 2 will be reincarnated randomly. Bale paused, pursing his lips as if considering whether to continue. Finally, he added, the closer relation the reincarnations of you 4 have, the worse deaths the reincarnations will suffer. He glanced at Neo. In your current reincarnation, all 4 of you were a family, which is why. Bale's voice trailed off. Neo immediately understood what he was implying. The tragedy of void window number 8477 happened due to the curse. The room was suffocatingly quiet as Neo took a few moments to digest Bale's words. Isn't Dad the god associated with death, afterlife, and the underworld? Why are we cursed like this? Neo's asked. I don't know, Bale answered. The last time I met Hades was when he left, saying he wanted to go on a short vacation. He disappeared for centuries. His reincarnated self returned thousands of years later on the verge of dying. He told me about the curse, that I needed to protect the world core in his place and to hide the news of his curse. The rest is history. Neo frowned. He didn't trust Bale, not after the first impression he made. How can I trust your words? If you don't want to, then don't. Nobody's forcing you. Neo clicked his tongue in frustration. Why? Aren't you asking me too many questions? Bale cut him off, standing up and stretching lazily. Neo glared at him. Where are you going? Going to sleep. I'm tired, Bale answered, yawning loudly as he turned toward the door. Neo watched as Bale left the room. Left alone, Neo couldn't stop his thoughts. Cursed bloodline. I heard the same words in the shadow trial, and now Bale said them again. His brows furrowed as he struggled to piece everything together. At least now I know Dad, Mom, and Henry are always reincarnating like me. Why hide the news, though? Everyone in the underworld thinks Dad is resting inside the palace. It did not take him long to realize the reason behind it. Underworld has countless monsters that are extremely powerful, not to mention souls that want to return to the world of living. The reason no one acts out of line is because all of them are afraid of Dad. But the moment they realize Dad is no longer there to stop them, they would go wild. Neo lay back on the bed. His back sunk into the soft mattress as his thoughts churned. Even on Luminera, Neo knew the exalted demigods would enter the underworld to rescue their people if they didn't fear Hades. Grim Reapers were there, true. But there were only 81 Grim Reapers. Even if they included the predecessors of current Grim Reapers, the number would be around 100 at best. They weren't enough to stop the chaos that would start if people found out the god of the underworld was no longer there. Damn it, Neo muttered, sinking deeper into the bed. Just then, a screen appeared before his eyes. Quest. Family. Find the current reincarnations of your parents, and bring them home. Reward. Nightmare element. Level up empathic bond X1. Neo raised his brows in surprise. There was no failure condition in the quest. A quest named Family is giving Nightmare element as a reward, Neo muttered bitterly to himself. This is going to be hard. Finding the reincarnations wasn't easy. People could reincarnate across time. 2. This was something Veldora had explained to him while they were on their way to the palace of the monarch. Neo could die in the year 1860, and his reincarnation would be born in 1660, or any time in the past or future. Why does everything have to be so complicated? Neo groaned, massaging his temples. He stood up and picked Obidus before leaving the room. Chapter 365 Unique Ability of Obidus, How to Create a World Core. He moved swiftly through the hallways. The place was too big for its own good. It was like a labyrinth that seemed determined to lose anyone who dared to enter it. He had to ask Velkaria for help. Where is the main hall where we met Bale? He asked. Turn left here, then go straight and take the third right, and. Velkaria's voice echoed in his mind. He followed Velkaria's words. It took him a few dozen minutes to reach the location. The grand hall stood before him. Its massive double doors were slightly ajar. The hall was empty. Where did he go? Neo muttered as he looked around. His brows furrowed in irritation. It seemed Bale had no intention of meeting him. Might as well try to meet the other guy who was here, he thought. Velkaria, where is the world core? He asked. Above you. Velkaria replied. Neo raised his head. All he saw was the massive chandelier. Its crystal ornaments shimmered like frozen stars. There is a subspace there. The world core is inside it. I see. Neo expanded his senses. He probed the space above him, searching for the hidden subspace. He tried to locate the subspace but was unsuccessful. I know you can hear me. Come out. Neo called out to Earth's world core. There was no response. His lips twitched in irritation. Fucker. Come out, he repeated. Silence. Neo clicked his tongue. As much as he wanted to meet the world core, it didn't look like the world core wanted to do the same. These fuckers, he muttered under his breath as he massaged his brows. Neo clicked his tongue again and returned to his bedchamber. He sat cross-legged on the bed. What are you doing? Velkaria's voice interrupted his thoughts. Trying to create a world core, Neo replied as he closed his eyes. You know how to create a world core? Velkaria's asked. Yeah, my skill told me how to do it, Neo lied without missing a beat. Huh, you have that kind of skill? Velkaria questioned. Neo didn't respond. He closed his eyes and focused inwards. Don't ignore me, fucker. Hey. Neo accessed the information of the primordial world core condensation technique stored inside his mind. To create a world core, he needed only one thing, a sacred treasure. The sacred treasure would become the foundation of the world core. The elemental affinities of the sacred treasure will determine the elemental affinities of my world core, he thought. No single world had all elemental affinities. As an example, Earth didn't have void affinity. It was why no one from Earth was born with void affinity and why no one from Earth had resistance against the void element. If I can get a sacred treasure that has affinity to all elements, my world core will be able to give me resistance to all elements, along with void. Neo's lips curved into a faint, thoughtful smirk. He already had a high resistance to all elements thanks to Earth's world core. If he added his own world core on top of that, he would gain a nigh impenetrable defense. However, creating a world core with clashing elements was not easy. Death and life, darkness and holy, shadow and light, mixing them was nearly impossible. Neo, deep in thoughts, heard a voice inside his mind. Neo, you don't need to worry. I'll handle the balance. Neo smiled faintly as he recognized Obadiah's voice. Obadiah's unique ability was harmonization. It allowed two opposites to exist together within him. Her ability was the reason why Neo, a dark type element user, could use healing potions in both life and holy elements without consequence. Almost all dark type users avoided healing potions or the life and holy elements unless it was a last resort. While such remedies could heal their injuries, they often left behind internal damage that might become permanent. At worst, their foundation and core would be in danger. Neo had never faced such a problem. He could use both life and death elements with ease. It was all thanks to Obadiah's unique ability. Even the fact that I am a heavenbreaker and an awakener at the same time should have been impossible, Neo thought. Awakeners connected to the world core of a planet. Heavenbreakers, on the other hand, created their own world energy and forged their own world core. These were fundamentally opposing paths of power, either drawing energy from an external source or generating it from oneself. No one could do both. But Obadiah's unique ability solved the problem. I guess this is why brother kept Obadiah's for me. He knew Obadiah's harmonization ability would allow me to use both mom and dad's elements without tearing myself apart. Neo's smile deepened. Thank you, Obadiah. He could feel Obadiah's presence shift. Her emotions fluttered like butterflies in her stomach. Neo chuckled softly before refocusing. All said and done, Obadiah isn't a complete sacred treasure. He would have to find a way to turn her into a complete sacred treasure. It was the only way he could attempt to break through from half-step ascension to first-step ascension rank. Maybe I can use other sacred treasures. Neo thought. His gaze turned to the status screen. Sacred treasures. Skyfall, Obadiah's incomplete. Skyfall, the name of Zeus' headless corpse, was within his shadow space. He didn't plan to use Zeus' corpse as the foundation for his world core. Even if he wanted to, Skyfall was weaker than Obidus. Using Skyfall will give my world core the affinities of Zeus. I don't know the exact number of affinities Zeus had, but I doubt it's more than what Obidus has. His gaze then shifted. The second sacred treasure is a question mark. I don't even know what the fuck this is. Neo clicked his tongue. He could only ignore the second sacred treasure. The only sacred treasure he could use, and the one he had planned to use, was Obidus. He could feel Obidus sulking when he thought of using another sacred treasure. Her mood brightened almost instantly when he finalized her as the sacred treasure to use. You're too easy to please, you know that. Neo thought with a faint smirk. Obidus harumphed in response. She closed the mental connection. Neo opened his eyes. You created the world core. Valkyria's voice rang. Weird, I don't feel any fluctuation in the energy around you. She paused before adding, isn't a breakthrough supposed to, come with boom and bam? Boom and bam. Seriously. What's wrong with that? Valkyria retorted indignantly. While they bickered, a screen suddenly appeared before Neo's eyes. Come meet me. Quote ellipsis question mark quote. Neo frowned. Who are you talking to? Valkyria's asked. She became quiet when she noticed Neo's sudden shift in demeanor. Who are you? Neo asked. Sphinx. The single word appeared on the screen. Why are you contacting me? I have a deal for you. Neo's expression remained neutral, though his thoughts raced. Why is Sphinx contacting me? What does it want with me? What's the deal? He asked. I will give you 3 answers if you complete a task for me. That's quite surprising for you too. How to turn your sword into a complete sacred treasure. How to save Elizabeth de Beaufort. The questions surprised Neo, but he kept his calm. That's 2 questions. What's the third question that you will answer for me? Despite the tempting offer, Neo's remained expressionless. There's no way this bastard Sphinx is contacting me for something easy, he thought. I need to be careful until I know its goal. The screen flickered momentarily before the final words appeared, sending a jolt through Neo's chest. How to find your parents. For a moment, Neo's thoughts froze. I will answer all 3 questions for you. Ellipsis. Chapter 366 Angels of Death. Neo's eyes narrowed. You know where I can find them. There was no response. The Sphinx had vanished. Its message was clear. Neo had to come meet it if he wanted answers. Neo clicked his tongue and stood up. Let's go. We are leaving. To where? Valkyria asked. To the world of the living. Neo sent Valkyria back into his shadow space. He took one last sweep through the palace, searching for Baal, only to be unsuccessful. With a faint sigh, he turned around and exited the palace. Outside, the underworld's landscape stretched before him. I greet thee, Prince, Veldora bowed. He had been patiently awaiting Neo's return. How was your meeting with the monarch? It was unexpected, Neo replied. Neo chose not to reveal Hades' absence. Some of the Grim Reapers must have an inkling that father is missing. After all, nobody has seen him in ages. The only reason Grim Reapers are hiding the news is to maintain stability and order in the underworld. Neo's thoughts churned as he stared at Veldora. Just like the Grim Reapers, others might have realized father is missing. They are silent because they lack confirmation. But if they were to confirm it, his brows furrowed. The underworld would be engulfed in chaos. It's going to happen soon. Neo clenched his fists. He had to be strong enough to handle the coming chaos, or find a way to bring his father back. Prince, is there any problem? No. Neo shook his head. We should return to the Forest of All Beginnings. As you wish, Prince. They took off to the air. Weeks passed as they traveled. After arriving at Forest of All Beginnings, Neo used his Grim Reaper badge. He activated it. A swirling portal of black energy materialized before him. Without hesitation, Neo stepped through the portal. The world shifted around him. Strange noises greeted him as he emerged, hushed moans and ragged breathing. Neo opened his eyes to find himself back in the private coffee room where he had first entered the underworld. The warm light of the room contrasted sharply with the darkness of underworld. However, the scene before him was far from ordinary. The shop owner, disheveled and half-naked, was busy with the waitress on the table. The air was thick with awkward tension as their shocked eyes met Neo's. Who are you? Neo swiftly appeared next to them and grabbed their heads. Sleep. He activated his mind control skill. The shop owner and the waitress slumped over and they fell into a deep sleep. Damn it, what kind of shitty timing is this? Neo muttered as he massaged his brows. The situation reminded him of his time with Daniel. Neo had often been forced to endure watching Daniel indulge in his reckless urges, especially when the man was backed up. Fuck. Somehow this is irritating. Neo's lips twisted into a scowl. He stared at the unconscious shop owner and waitress sprawled awkwardly across the table. With a click of his tongue, he stepped closer and activated his skill. Mind invasion, he muttered. His soul manifestation materialized inside the waitress's mind. Inside there, fragmented memories floated like shards of broken glass. Neo navigated through them, searching for the memory of his sudden arrival. Upon finding it, he focused intently and destroyed it. Strictly speaking, mind invasion was a tool for memory viewing, not alteration. Tampering with a person's memories could harm their mind if not done carefully. Erasing a large portion of memory risked irreversible damage. Removing just 5 seconds should be safe, Neo reasoned. After completing his task, Neo turned to the shop owner and repeated the process. He cast one last glance at the sleeping pair before exiting the shop. The streets outside were quiet, bathed in the soft, golden glow of the evening sun. A cool breeze rustled the leaves of nearby trees. Neo activated his shadow jump spell. The world blurred around him and he moved toward the academy. He reached his destination quickly. Is this the academy where you study, Prince? Veldora's voice echoed softly. Neo glanced at the blue, flickering flame floating above his shoulder, Veldora's current form. Yes, this is the place where I and other demigods study, Neo replied. Angels, grim reapers, were beings bestowed with the blood of the monarch. They had sworn eternal loyalty to him. It was this bloodline that protected them from turning into mindless monsters like other souls in Underworld. The blood also granted them enhanced abilities, boosting their dark-type affinities. However, it also bound them to the laws of the monarch. The dead shall not interfere with the living. It was an unbreakable rule. Any angel of Hades who dared to break it would face dire consequences. At best, they would lose their powers. At worst, they would suffer a horrifying death. It was this rule that ensured no Grim Reaper took action in the world of the living. Veldora was not a Grim Reaper. He, however, had a tiny amount of the monarch's blood. It stopped his monsterization but left him unable to do much in the world of the living. Veldora, is it true you can't do much in the world of living like other Grim Reapers? Neo asked. It is partially true, Prince, Veldora replied, his voice calm, tinged with respect. The restrictions on me are much lighter than those on the other angels of death. I can move more freely than others. But even so the things I can do are limited. Veldora, despite carrying the monarch's blood, had never sworn his loyalty to Hades. Instead, he had pledged himself entirely to Neo. Thus, Veldora was not an angel and couldn't exercise the full power granted by the monarch's blood. However, this also meant he was less restricted compared to other Grim Reapers. I see, Neo said. Neo walked through the academy grounds. He passed by one of the student blocks and noticed Felix and Arthur. The two trudged forward with heavy steps. Their faces were pale, and they had dark circles under their eyes. They walked like zombies, their arms barely swinging with each step. Chapter 367 Withdrawal from Academy, Honorary Student. Looks like the training is doing a number on them, Neo muttered. Neo had access to his intent clone at all times. He could monitor how others fared against it. There were points in time when Neo couldn't divide his focus between his physical body and the clone, like during his intense battle with Bale. In such cases, he used his mind invasion skill to access the clone's memories afterward. Neo's mind was powerful, capable of sustaining the burden of the skill, something barely anyone could do. He walked through the academy. Just as he was considering how to arrange a meeting with Sphinx, a portal materialized before him. Its silver surface distorted like ripples in water. Please come inside, said one of the principal's puppets. Standing on the other side. Neo gave a curt nod, stepping into the silvery portal. He felt a shift, and in the next moment, he found himself standing outside the principal's office. Please enter the room. The principal is waiting for you, the doll said. The doors of the office creaked open on their own. The principal's desk stood at the center of the room. Charlotte sat behind it. A frown adorned her face. Neo Hargraves, the academy has started weeks ago. I do not recall giving you the permission to. The principal's stern voice trailed off abruptly when an overwhelming, suffocating aura erupted within the office. The air seemed to grow heavy. Veldora's piercing gaze bore into her. Talk politely, demi-human. You are in the presence of the prince of the underworld, Veldora said. Charlotte clenched her jaw, as she resisted the crushing force of his aura. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead, but her eyes remained firm. She refused to show weakness, even as the pressure made her heart pound violently. Her pride as the academy's principal would not allow it. She released her own aura. The office trembled. The walls groaned under the strain, and thin cracks began to spread across the ceiling like veins. The clash of their auras created an almost tangible tension in the room. Books toppled from their shelves, and the once orderly office descended into chaos. They were locked in a fierce impasse. Neo, seated calmly in a chair as if the chaos didn't exist, finally intervened. His voice, though soft, cut through the oppressive atmosphere like a blade. Stop. Veldora's aura flickered before withdrawing, albeit reluctantly. Understood, Prince, Veldora said. Charlotte, frowning and still tense, also retracted her aura. The office gradually returned to silence. I apologize for my friend's outburst, Principal, Neo said. Charlotte's lips were pressed in thin line, clearly displeased. Prince, why are you? Veldora. Neo's voice was sharp. Veldora's expression hardened, but he silenced himself immediately upon hearing Neo's tone. We aren't thugs, Neo said. Let's listen to her first. Yes, Prince, Veldora replied. Neo turned to Charlotte. Why did you call me, Principal? He asked. Charlotte's eyes darted between Neo and Veldora before she finally answered. You haven't attended any classes during the past week. Students who take extended leaves can be subjected to expulsion, she said. I'm sure my brother must have given a reason for my absence. Neo replied. He did, but second semester students are not allowed to leave the academy unless it's for a mission, Charlotte said firmly. I see. Neo nodded thoughtfully. So I'm not allowed to leave the academy? No. Then, I'll voluntarily withdraw the academy. What? Charlotte's eyes widened in shock. My reason for attending the academy was to use other students as a whetstone for my growth and to become a Templar. But I've already surpassed the students. I learned all of the curriculum during the time I was regressing while awakening my time element, and Neo pursed his lips before adding, I don't need the Junior Templar certification. As the clan leader of the Great Clan of Death, which is one of the 3 great clans, I already am a Junior Templar. You need to attend the college if you want the right to challenge a Senior Templar for their position, Charlotte countered. As I said, as the clan leader of the Great Clan of Death, I already have that right, Neo responded. Charlotte sighed deeply. She leaned back in her chair. Neo was born with a diamond spoon. The phrase crossed her mind bitterly. His lineage, privilege, and innate talent made him untouchable. If he wanted to leave, she couldn't stop him. And she knew it. How about becoming an honorary student? That way, your record will stay flawless, and you can go outside the academy while still being an academy student, the principal offered. What's an honorary student? Neo asked. You will be a student in name only, and you will have all the freedom you want, Charlotte explained. So I don't need to attend the classes. No. What about the exams? You don't need to give them either. Neo tilted his head slightly. That's quite an offer you are making. What's the reason behind it? Charlotte's lips curved into a bitter smile as she leaned forward. Her fingers interlaced atop the desk. Image, she said. Demigod Academy's image will take a huge hit if the clan leader of a great clan leaves in the middle of his academic tenure. It will make people question our capabilities. They will say, we heard the Demigod Academy is the best academy on Luminera, but if it's the best, why did a genius like Neo Hargraves leave? Charlotte's piercing gaze met Neo's. Especially now that your fame is at an all-time high, your withdrawal will affect us a lot, she said. Neo had become a household name. The supernova who defeated the genius of the Zeus clan during the Academy Entrancement tournament. The one who single-handedly became the reason for an S-rank mission's completion. The immortal slayer who took down the legendary Minotaur with a single hit. The swordsman who solo conquered a tiger-ranked window. The one who inherited the blood of Hades. The owner of a true soul weapon. The returner who completed a shadow trial. It was harder to find someone who did not know Neo than to find someone who did. So that's why you want me to become an honorary student, Neo said. Yes, Charlotte replied. The position will give you the freedom you want, while we can save our image at the same time. What's in it for me? Charlotte looked at him with an exasperated expression. Chapter 368 Meeting Sphinx again. Author note. I made an error a few chapters ago. The reward for the family quest is 2 levels of the empathic bond skill, not 1. Ellipsis. When he didn't say anything, she realized he was not joking. You want something in return? Yes. Charlotte frowned. Neo had no lack of wealth. Aside from mythical treasures inside Academy's vault, he could obtain almost anything with ease. What do you want? Something from the Academy's vault. I don't want those scraps, Neo interrupted. Scraps. Charlotte stammered. Those scraps were treasures that could make anyone drool. They were only given to the top-ranked students, and even then, only when they achieved rare and extraordinary feats. Her hands curled into fists for a moment as she tried to suppress her irritation. She took a slow, steadying breath, realizing she had almost let her emotions slip. After a brief cough to compose herself, she returned to her stern expression. Then what do you want? Neo's expression remained unreadable as he leaned slightly back in his chair. Your vote. Quote ellipsis dot exclamation mark quote. She took a moment to make sure she had not misheard him. You want my vote for the Senior Templar position? Charlotte asked in disbelief. Not now, Neo clarified. But yes, in the future, I want your vote. The room seemed to grow colder as Charlotte's gaze hardened. She studied him silently for a moment before shaking her head firmly. You can leave the academy, but I won't give my vote to you, she declared. Why the sudden change of thoughts? I thought you wanted me to be an honorary student. Brat, don't try to be smart with me, Charlotte snapped. She glared at him. Her vote would mean the academy supported Neo. After a junior Templar defeated a senior Templar in combat, a voting process would occur to determine if they could take the seat of the senior Templar. Only exalted and paragon demigods could vote. In the world of politics, strength alone couldn't make you reach the top. Influence was necessary too. The Academy has always maintained a neutral stance. We never have, and never will, cast any votes. Charlotte's voice was firm. She was about to call the puppets to send Neo away when suddenly, a translucent screen materialized before her. Help him, Sphinx? Charlotte questioned, confused. I will owe you one if you agree to his demands. Charlotte frowned. She looked up from the screen and stared at Neo. Why was the Sphinx intervening on his behalf? A favor from Sphinx. It's valuable, a lot more than the entire Academy's vault, she thought. The knowledge from the Akashic record was not distributed freely. Charlotte's lips pressed into a thin line as she weighed her options. She could ask something specific, something she desired deeply. Fine, Charlotte finally said. I agree to your demands, Neo Hargraves. Neo nodded. He had seen the screen the Sphinx showed to Charlotte. What is that fucker trying to do? The sound of footsteps broke the silence as two puppets entered the room. They moved in perfect synchronization and created a portal that shimmered like liquid silver in the air. Sphinx said it wants to meet you. Go, Charlotte said. Neo nodded again. He passed through the portal and felt a shift. He appeared a dark tunnel. The air was cool, carrying a faint metallic tang. Shadows loomed around him, shifting unnaturally, yet the faint glow ahead drew his attention. Neo moved forward. Soon, the faint glow turned into a blinding light and engulfed him. The space around him distorted. A beat later, he found himself in an empty hall. The hall was vast. It had high ceiling and the walls were smooth and featureless. Just like last time, a table appeared in the center of the hall. Sphinx, inhabiting the body of a man in a crisp black suit, sat on one of the two chairs. Its faceless face was as unnerving as ever. How was my gift? The Sphinx asked. I helped you with the principal. Why did you do that? To show my goodwill. If you have a favorable impression of me, you will be more likely to accept my task, it answered with a low chuckle. As that's so, Neo responded. He pulled out the chair with a soft scrape against the smooth stone floor and sat down. Before we talk about my request, there is something I'd like to know. The Sphinx leaned forward slightly. What do you think of my appearance? Quote ellipsis dot question mark quote. Oh, don't worry. It's not related to the task at all, the Sphinx clarified with an almost playful tone before adding, so, do you recognize it? Neo remained silent. He did recognize the appearance. It belonged to Charybdis, one of Typhon's three sovereigns. He, however, had no intention of revealing anything unless he understood the Sphinx's goal. You have quite a good poker face, the Sphinx said, grinning. Its faceless face twisted into a eerie smile. You know, the information about the past, before the records were created, is not present inside the Akashic records, the Sphinx said. What are you trying to say? Neo asked. There was something I wanted to find, but since the information about that far back isn't present, I failed. Neo's brows creased. The Sphinx's roundabout way of speaking made him cautious. The creator of the Akashic record created the records to save two people, the Sphinx suddenly said. Me, and someone else. Neo maintained his calm expression. Inwardly, he was stunned. He pieced together the clues after hearing Sphinx's words. So Daniel saved the child of Mana by creating the records. He thought. The creator no longer remembers who he wanted to save. The only one who knows the answer is the first guardian of the Akashic record, the Tree of Tyranny, the Sphinx continued. But he refuses to answer me. The Sphinx's body disappeared from its seat. A sudden, cold presence enveloped Neo as the Sphinx reappeared behind him. Its hand rested on his shoulder. The touch was light. With no other way, I tried to look through the records to find clues about the person the creator wanted to save. I didn't find him anywhere. Who was he? There was no knowledge, not even a little bit, about him in Akashic records. It's almost as if the Sphinx leaned down. Its faceless head tilted close to Neo's ear and it whispered. That person doesn't exist. Coincidentally, I know another person who doesn't appear in the Akashic records as if he doesn't exist. I'm talking to him right now. I don't understand what you are trying to say, Neo replied with a neutral face. The Sphinx's form shimmered before vanishing again. It reappeared on its seat, leaning back casually. The eerie grin on its faceless visage, however, was anything but relaxed. I chose this appearance the first time as you would have recognized it if you went to the past and met the creator of the Akashic record, leading him to create the records. Quote. But you didn't recognize my appearance. The Sphinx's grin widened. It made me wonder if I had been wrong. A low chuckle echoed in the hall. But lo and behold, you entered a shadow trial. Where did you go during your shadow trial, Neo Hargraves? Was it a 100% synchro world? Did you go to the past? The Sphinx's voice had a mocking edge as it questioned him. Neo was not intimidated in the least. Why do you want to know about my shadow trial? The Sphinx's laughter echoed once more. Why, it's of course to kill you if you are him. Quote. That person is the reason why I was saved, but he is also the reason the creator of the Akashic record destroyed himself. For the first time, Neo sensed a crack in the Sphinx's tone. Deep hatred and anger reverberated through its words. I'm going to put him through the same torture my brother underwent. Brother. The creator of the Akashic record is your brother. Neo acted oblivious. The Sphinx stared at him as if searching for answers in his eyes. Chapter 369 Limitless Potential. Neo's thoughts churned as he watched the Sphinx. Veldora told me the names of Grim Reaper. Tree of Tyranny is Typhaon's title after he became the 81st ranked Grim Reaper. From what Sphinx said, Typhaon knows Daniel wanted to save me, but Typhaon never revealed this to Sphinx. Was Typhaon hiding the news to protect Neo? His train of thought broke when the Sphinx clapped its hands once. Seems like you are not him. It's all water under the bridge then, the Sphinx said. Oh, and don't worry, the thing about me having a task for you was real. Neo nodded. After receiving his confirmation, the Sphinx shifted its stance and returned to the topic for which it had summoned Neo. I want you to do a task for me, and I will answer 3 questions for you. What's the task? This, the Sphinx replied, snapping its fingers. A giant hologram appeared between them. Neo raised his brow slightly as he looked at the scene. It showed an apocalypse. The sea surrounding the Luminera continent had turned red, overtaken by the Blood Sea. Waves of crimson liquid crashed against the shores. The Blood Sea had reached the land, and monstrous creatures emerged from its depths. They invaded the continent. Chaos unfolded on the hologram. Cities burned. Smoke billowed into the sky, and the anguished cries of the people seemed almost audible. The ground was littered with bodies, and rivers of blood flowed through the streets. A war raged on all corners of the continent, with heavy casualties mounting. Cities fell every day. No matter how many monsters were defeated, more emerged from the Blood Sea. Their numbers seemed to be endless. All of those monsters are at least Paragon rank. It's a sight that will occur in the near future. The Sphinx stared at the hologram. It's the era of Blood Sea War. Soon the peace of our continent will shatter, and chaos will engulf everyone. It lowered its head and locked eyes with Neo. A sly smile appeared on the Sphinx's face, seeing Neo's composed demeanor. You seem quite calm. Have you seen a similar situation before, or did you know something like this would happen in the future? I'm plenty shocked, he lied. The Sphinx's smile deepened. Before it could try to find cracks in his lies, Neo changed the topic. What's the task? I doubt you want to save the continent. If that was your goal, you would have informed the senators, not me, who is an Empyrean demigod, Neo said. Oh, please, both of us know you are far stronger than an Empyrean. And you are right and wrong about other things too. The Sphinx cleared its throat exaggeratedly before continuing. Firstly, yes, my goal isn't to save the continent. Secondly, no, Even if my goal was to save the continent, I would have approached you before others, the Sphinx explained. Why? Neo questioned. Because others would ask me for something in return for saving the continent, the Sphinx explained with a snicker. Why should they save the continent? Unless I give them a reward, I doubt they would move. You, on the other hand, are different. I mean, you want a reward too, but your cost efficiency is better than other senators, the Sphinx said. Cost efficiency? Neo questioned. Think of it like this. I get more returns with you when I give you a reward than the returns I get from other senators. Neo was limitless potential personified. By the time a normal demigod reached Empyrean rank, they would have undergone 2 major evolutions. Neo, on the other hand, underwent 4 major evolutions since he had 2 traits, unlike others who had only 1 trait. He was far stronger than any demigod of his rank. When adding his strength as a heavenbreaker to everything else, it only made him more unfathomable. Your traits are at Empyrean rank and only a bit away from Paragon rank. When they evolve again, you would become as strong as a new exalted demigod. This is just the beginning for you. Your strength will go beyond exalted rank when your ascension ranks increase. On top of that, with your true darkness concept, you can gain more traits, and, well, you get the gist of it. You have a higher chances of stopping the Blood Sea War than other senators, as long as I provide you with enough materials to nourish your growth, the Sphinx explained. But your goal isn't to stop the Blood Sea War, Neo pointed out. What's the task you want to give me? I can't tell you that until you promise me that you will accept it. I can't accept it without knowing what it is. Fair enough, the Sphinx nodded. How about this? I will explain to you the basics of what I want, and I will give you one answer. After that, you must make a choice. Neo frowned. The conditions seemed too generous, and he knew better than to trust the Sphinx at face value. Go on. I'm listening. Those monsters you saw in the hologram. I want you to go to their homeland and do something there for me. I need to go inside the Blood Sea. Neo asked. Not the Blood Sea. They are from another place. Neo's mind raced as he thought about the Sphinx's words. All of the monsters that appeared during the Blood Sea War would be Paragon rank at the minimum. That means their homeland is filled with strong monsters. He had been searching for a place like that to train. Sphinx's offer was a heaven sent. Despite the favorable conditions, Neo maintained his composure. He remained calm instead of jumping on the offer. I will think about it if you give me an answer to one of the 3 questions. I see. I see. The Sphinx nodded repeatedly with a playful expression. What question do you want an answer to? I can choose the question. Of course not. Ha 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 ha. The Sphinx threw its head back and laughed. Watching it like this made Neo recall why he never liked the Sphinx. Give me the answer already. Okay. The Sphinx disappeared. Your parents. Its voice echoed in the empty hall, bouncing off the ceilings and the walls. Their reincarnations are alive, and you have met them in the present already. Senator Nicholas Mansion, Arindale City, Arindor Country. The mansion exuded an air of wealth and power. The drawing room was no less magnificent, with luxurious furniture and a crackling fireplace casting a warm glow against the deep burgundy walls. A crystal chandelier hung above, illuminating the space with a soft, golden light. A man seemingly in his 20s sat on the plush sofa. He had white hair and a thick beard. A scar ran over his left eye up to his chin, leaving him partially blind. His expression was stern, reflecting years of experience. Why are you here? The man, Senator Nicholas, asked the young man, sitting in front of him. To talk about the inheritor of death, the young man answered with a smile. Despite his carefree demeanor, the air around him seemed to tremble every time he spoke. Directly to the point, Nicholas scoffed. He took a sip of the tea and placed it down on the table. The steam from the tea curled into the air, dissipating slowly. What about him? He insulted your disciple twice. Aren't you going to do anything about him? The young man asked, leaning slightly backward. Chapter 370, the one above all, searching through the memories. I won't, Nicholas said with a calm expression. I've already settled the matters with Henry Hargraves. There is no need to punish Neo Hargraves anymore. Sure, you won't punish him. Your ranked disciples must already be looking for a way to punish him. The young man rolled his eyes, his tone dripping with sarcasm. If you know that, why are you asking it? They won't be enough. You need to use a stronger method to deal with him. Deal with him is too strong of a phrase. My disciples will just scare him a bit, Nicholas said. Sigh. Really? The young man said. He has the bloodline of Hades. And I had no intention of joining you in your slaughter of the bloodline of Hades, Nicholas replied. You make it sound like I'm doing something wrong, the young man retorted. You are doing something wrong. I'm not, the young man answered. The last time we let a child of Hades run wild, he almost cost us everything. His actions helped us advance our world to stage -2. Helped us. You are saying that. You lost your eye against him while trying to kill him. You, who were once called the paragon of justice, tried to kill him for he was chaos himself. We can't let another one like him run wild, the young man said. You are being too paranoid. Hades' bloodline is dangerous, the young man said, cutting Nicholas mid-sentence, his smile gone. We let the one be since Hades' bloodline has infinite potential and he. The young man sighed. Barely anyone with Hades' bloodline can reach awakened rank. It might be related to their initial skill, or there might be another reason for their low survival rate. But once they cross the initial hurdle, they unlock their infinite potential. The one is the best example, and all he did with his potential was create chaos and discord. The room fell silent. Centuries ago, the Earth was a stage -1 planet, and the gene limit was paragon rank. This gene limit was the same for everyone. Everyone except one bloodline. The bloodline of Hades. The one, a son of Hades, had reached exalted rank while the Earth was a stage -1 planet. He became an unrivaled demigod, earning him the name, the one above all. His heinous actions are the reason why we erased the trace of all children of Hades from history, and now you are thinking we should let Neo Hargraves grow. The young man said. Neo Hargraves might be different. What if he isn't different? What if he is worse than the one? You are just angry about what happened in the past, Nicholas said, standing up with a heavy sigh. His shadow stretched across the room, wavering slightly from the firelight. He turned around to leave the room. Think about my words carefully, Nicholas. He has already reached the level of paragons. We still have time, but it won't be long before he stands on par with us. Because, unlike us, he isn't limited by our world's gene limit. When that happens, we won't be able to suppress him if he decides to follow in the footsteps of the previous son of Hades. Nicholas paid him no heed and kept walking. The tragedy might repeat itself, the young man spoke his last words as Nicholas closed the door behind him. Ellipsis. Demigod Academy. Are you sure my parents are in the present? Neo asked. Yes, I am. You've met them already, Sphinx answered. Are they newborns, right now? He questioned cautiously. Who knows? The Sphinx chuckled, seeing Neo unable to hide his emotions anymore. They might be kids. Or they might be adults. Although they died only a few years ago, they could have reincarnated into the past, and now might be as old or older than me and brother. Neo had stopped thinking logically. Just the fact he could meet his parents turned his mind into a chaotic mess. Where are they right now? Neo asked. Use your skill and find out. Neo frowned. He was about to ask if the Sphinx was playing games with him until he recalled his skill. Mind invasion. He used the skill on himself. His consciousness drifted inward. Neo's soul manifestation appeared outside of a large palace, the place where he stored his memories. The palace stood majestically under a starry sky. He entered the palace. It was a giant library from the inside. Countless books, each depicting a specific memory, rested on the shelves. The Sphinx said Mom and Dad are in, present. I should look into those memories. Neo pulled a book and opened it. The world around him changed, replaying the memory of when he first woke up as Neo Hargraves, thinking he had come inside a novel. His soul manifestation floated around the place. It allowed him to see his memories in a third-person point of view. He looked through the first day of memory. It's not here. Let's check another day. Neo flipped through the pages. He was using his intent senses to scan everyone he had seen in the past. Something like this was only possible for Neo, an intent user who could read memories. He looked through the memories of the Mermaid Country, his first fight in the underworld against Gullwakes, the Academy ranking tournament, him trying to destroy a camp of gremlins, and him completing a C rank missions. Where are they? Neo increased his memory reading pace. The burden over his mind multiplied by several folds. His physical body began to bleed through the nose. He paid it no mind and kept his focus on memory. Reading. The S-rank mission, the visions of the Sphinx, the labyrinth of the Minotaur, time element awakening, the tiger-ranked window that appeared above the labyrinth after Neo defeated the Minotaur. Found them. Neo paused the scene playing inside his memory. In front of him, a man and woman were present inside the labyrinth. Neo repeatedly scanned them using his intent senses. Their intent was the same as the intent he found within his blessing. It's them. Chapter 371 Neo's Concepts of Life and Holy Element, Sphinx's Trap. Neo stared at the reincarnations of his parents. The sight made his blood freeze. His chest tightened, and for a moment, even breathing felt like a Herculean effort. Mira and George. The people who streamed my battle against the Minotaur. The realization made feel an emotion. Fear. If I had not interfered. Neo had defeated the Minotaur, which caused a tiger-ranked window to open above the labyrinth of the Minotaur. The window had trapped a mythic-ranked necromancer. In the original timeline, where Neo did not exist, the tiger-ranked window would have opened a few years later. The necromancer would have emerged. He would have kidnapped a few people. Mira and George, the reincarnations of Neo's parents, were among them. The necromancer would have used them to feed the spirit seed he was raising. George's fate in the novel was a brutal death at the hand of necromancer. He, like other people, was tortured for months so that the spirit seed could get to eat plenty of negative emotions. The traumatic experience would have allowed Mira to awaken her godblood. Her awakening helped her snatch control of the spirit seed from the necromancer and kill him. The spirit seed was one of darkness. It would have corrupted her mind after it bonded with Mira. Mira's mind broke completely in the novel, and she became one of the future big villains. Neo's hands curled into fists. If Neo had not interfered, his parents' reincarnations would have faced a future more horrible than death. Bale's words echoed in Neo's mind. The closer your parents' reincarnations are to each other, the worse death they will suffer. Mira and George were a couple who had intentions to marry. They were pretty close. The curse would have killed his parents after soaking them in despair. Just the thought of his parents' suffering made his emotions go out of control. Neo stopped using the mind invasion skill. The scene around him returned. The dark hall, the oppressive silence, and the Sphinx's mocking gaze. How was it? The Sphinx snickered. Since you seem to know bits and pieces of the future, you must know what the future holds for those reincarnations. The Sphinx tilted its head. A grin appeared on its face. How does it feel to know you've saved the lives of your parents' reincarnations unknowingly? Neo remained silent. He felt like shit, but he wasn't going to give the Sphinx any satisfaction by telling it how he was feeling. While Neo remained silent, the Sphinx's voice echoed again. Now that you have your answer, how about you accept my task? Quote. Neo wanted to accept the task. But he did not trust the Sphinx, especially when he did not know the reason behind the task. Oh, please, are you seriously considering refusing my offer? The Sphinx teleported before him. You need my help to save the Tyrant Queen. You should know you can't save her yourself, the Sphinx said, its grin widening. I can. Ha 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 ha. Are you seriously saying you can save her? How will you do that? With those concepts. The Sphinx's laughter rang out again. As an administrator of Akashic Record, it could access Neo's status screen. It had seen his previous concepts of life and the holy element. Your concept of water is aqua nihil. For life, it was decay, and for holy, it was preservation. The Sphinx's voice dripped with disdain. All those concepts are destructive in nature. Because that's who you are. Because that's the life you've experienced, Neo Hargraves. No matter how much you train, you can't change your nature, the Sphinx spat. You won't magically get a concept that will allow you to heal the tyrant. Neo's mind flashed back to the world Velkaria had destroyed. A world devoid of hope, color, and vitality. There was no greenery, no life. Nothing was left. The source of life, water, had disappeared with everything. Life would never return to the world again. Neo had lived in that desolate world for centuries, walking through barren lands and watching as even the faintest hope of life was snuffed out. That's what became his concept of the water element. Aqua nihil. The nihility of water. It created a domain around Neo where no water was present, turning his surroundings into an arid wasteland. It was especially useful against water affinity demigods and monsters. Your concepts. They can't save anyone. I mean, look at them. The Sphinx's words cut bore hole into Neo's mind. Water. I can understand that you don't associate it with healing like most people do, but decay, for life. The Sphinx chuckled. Concept of decay. It allowed Neo to extract the life force of his target and turn it into a poisonous life force, decay, with which he could attack others. That's how Neo saw life. Decay. From the day one was born, they started to walk toward their own death. Even if they were successful, even if they became happy, the ending never changed. They would die. If not today, then tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then years later. Neo's gaze remained fixed on the floor as the Sphinx's voice became a whisper in his ear. Life, living, is but a decay that would end in death. Isn't that how you see the world? Neo clenched his jaws. He knew his concepts were twisted. Living was not decaying. Just because one was going to die didn't make life meaningless. Life was a journey. It was something to be enjoyed. Neo knew that, but he couldn't help it. The life he had lived was not something he could change. Also, preservation, for holy. That sounds nice, but knowing how you would use it. The Sphinx paused, letting the mockery sink in before continuing. It's disgusting. Neo's fists clenched tighter. The Sphinx's words dug into him like barbs. Preservation allowed Neo to maintain any being's state. Simply put, their injuries wouldn't worsen. The concept of preservation would preserve them. Usually, such a concept should be useful for saving someone fatally injured until they could be healed by someone. But Neo's concept had a different use. Preservation and eternal death. Eternal sleep. Neo's death would put anyone in eternal sleep. But that person would die physically after some time. After all, sleeping wouldn't stop his aging. Their bodies would grow old. Sleeping eternally would prevent them from consuming food and they would weaken. It would lead them to death, due to starvation or aging. A natural death, a death that was not Neo's. That death was an escape from Neo's eternal death. Your preservation was a prison, wasn't it? It would prevent anyone from dying and escaping your death, Neo Hargraves. Preservation would force your prisoners to live eternally under your death. The Sphinx mocked the irony of his concepts. Logically, his concepts had a very high synergy. But your concepts can't save anyone, Neo Hargraves. If you don't take my help, you can't save the tyrant. The Sphinx's voice was smooth. Yet each word was laced with malice. It seemed to delight in seeing him caught in this internal conflict. Oh, that reminds me, the Sphinx said. Someone like you should have no regard for life. That's what your concepts are saying. But that's weird. You want to save the tyrant. Why is it that you? Neo opened his mouth, only for the Sphinx to interrupt him. Wait, let me guess. Don't spoil it. The Sphinx crossed its arms. It tilted its head as if deep in thought. Oh, I get it. It looked at him with a grin so wide it bordered on sinister. You are afraid of being alone. That why you want to save the queen and the others. I let you talk since I wanted to hear what you had to say, but seriously. Neo finally spoke. Afraid of being alone. What kind of fucking nonsense is that? Why would I be afraid of being alone? He couldn't help but shake his head inwardly. There is no way I'm falling for a bait like this. The Sphinx's words, as always, had a purpose behind them. It was to know if Neo was the one whom Daniel wanted to save. Unlike what it had told Neo, the Sphinx had actually found a few clues about the person Daniel was trying to save. The clues didn't come from the Akashic records. They came from the Daniel's notes. He has been alone for centuries, fighting. How much loss and loneliness he must have suffered. It was all for the world. Why should someone who sacrificed everything to protect the world die in exchange? I need to save him. I must do it. If Neo was the person Daniel talked about in his notes, it meant he had been fighting someone alone for centuries. Right now, the Sphinx taunted Neo. It said he was trying to save his friends as he didn't want to be alone. He wanted companions. Had I showed a reaction, I would have unknowingly revealed that I was the one who saved the world, and the one whom Daniel had been trying to save, Neo thought. All of the Sphinx's words had been a trap to force the answer out of Neo. Why are you silent? Neo suddenly asked the Sphinx, breaking the stillness. Just wondering about things, the Sphinx finally said, wondering if Neo had known about its bait, or if he was not the one the Sphinx was looking for. Well, I'll accept your offer, Neo said, cutting the Sphinx off mid-sentence. The Sphinx raised an eyebrow. I thought you were suspicious of me. I still am. But that does not change the fact that completing your request will help me too. The homeland of monsters was a treasure trove for Neo, and he wasn't about to let such a chance slip by. That's nice, the Sphinx said with a smile. You can go meet your parents and pack your bags. Come meet me after your preparations are done. What about the other two answers? Don't worry, sweetie. The Sphinx waved its hand with a normal smile for once. I won't back down on my words. I will tell you what you want to know when you come to meet me again. Chapter 372 Shocking News. Neo didn't bother trying to get a guarantee from the Sphinx. The Sphinx never lied. It could trick, but its words were always true. The Sphinx disappeared. It did not reappear anymore, as if saying their meeting was done. Neo took one last look at the empty hall. His footsteps echoed softly as he turned and walked away. A portal shimmered at the end of the hall. Without hesitation, he stepped through. He felt a shift. The cold stillness of the hall was replaced by the familiar warmth of the evening sun. Neo noticed the principal's puppet standing in front of him. "We hope your meeting with the Sphinx was good," the puppet said with a bow. "Yeah," Neo said. The meeting had been shit. Mostly because the Sphinx knew how to get under others' skin, and it enjoyed doing that. Neo saw no reason to reveal that to the puppets. Before he left the building, the puppets spoke in unison again. "The Sphinx has told us about your next appointment with her. When you want to meet her, you can find us by coming here, and we will teleport you to her lair." Good to know that. Neo left the building. On the way, he continued to think about his conversation with the Sphinx. "The way Sphinx told me about everything, especially mom and dad, it's like it doesn't know about the quests." Neo frowned. The Sphinx should have been able to see his status screen. That's why it knew of his concepts and ascension rank. Maybe it's possible that the Sphinx doesn't know about the quests. After all, only I have the quest section in the status screen. It might be something that isn't related to the Akashic records. Everyone had a status screen. But not quests. Neo tried to think of a reason about it. However, he couldn't come to a proper conclusion. Might as well focus on things in front of me. He called Henry while he was on the way back. "What is it?" Henry's voice came out from the device's speaker. "Is the line secure?" Neo asked. Quote. Question mark quote. Henry, on the other side, frowned. He leaned back in his chair. It was Neo's first time asking such a question, and it immediately put Henry on edge. "Wait a few seconds," Henry said. He activated a series of security protocols before he spoke again. "It's secure now. MI and GI stream channel. Do you remember them?" Neo asked. "I do." Henry's brow furrowed as he tried to recall details. "They were the ones who streamed your fight against Minotaur." Neo was slightly surprised Henry remembered such a small detail. For obvious reasons, he kept his thoughts to himself. "Find them and..." Neo stopped. What were they supposed to do after locating Mira and George? Just find where they are right now and make sure they are safe. "I will explain everything to you once I'm home," Neo finally said. "Fine," Henry replied. "But this better be something important enough for me to waste my time upon. Bitch, are you or dead? It's important. Trust me." Neo cut the call and resumed his walk to the gates. He hailed a cab, and directed the driver to the Hargraves mansion. Upon arrival, he stepped out and quickly made his way inside and found Henry in his office. "Hey." Neo raised his hand in greeting. Henry gave a curt nod. His eyes remained glued to the screen of his laptop. "Come here and see this," Henry said. Neo circled the large desk, and leaned over to peer at the screen. "What's so interesting that you tell me to watch it as soon as?" His words faltered mid-sentence. On the screen, a live feed showed a woman, Mira, bawling her eyes out. She was sitting with a friend in a small cafe. "Why is she crying?" Neo asked, frowning in concern. "Her boyfriend is cheating on her," Henry replied. Huh. Neo blinked, confused. He wondered if he had misheard Henry. Dad is cheating on mom. Before Neo could voice his thoughts, Henry raised a hand to stop him. "Don't bother me now. Let me see this. It's not easy to find drama like this every day." Henry's gaze was fixated on the screen as if he were watching his favorite TV show. Myra's trembling voice emanated from the laptop speakers. I thought he was going to propose to me." Her voice broke. She sniffed, clutching a tissue as she continued. "It is our 5th year's anniversary. It should be time he asked me to marry him, but." Her words turned into incoherent sobs as she buried her face in her hands. The other patrons in the cafe whispered amongst themselves as they sneaked glances in Myra's directions. The waiter approached their table. "Ma'am, you are disturbing the customers." Myra's friend, looking flustered, waved a hand. Apologetically. "Sorry about my friend. We'll leave soon. Just give us a minute," she said in a pleading tone. The waiter nodded curtly and walked away. Myra's friend, Julia, rubbed her back gently, trying to comfort Mira as she sobbed uncontrollably. "Are you sure you saw him with another woman? I mean, it could be his friend." "There's no need to think he's cheating on you," Julia said softly. "We've been together for years. I know all his friends. How come I don't know a girl who's close enough to meet him in our apartment?" Mira shot back. Julia pursed her lips before she spoke. Maybe what?" Mira shouted. "He met her while I was away. When I tried asking him, he acted as if nothing had happened." Her voice cracked, and her hands clenched the edge of the table. And why are you taking his side? Mira demanded, glaring at her. I'm sorry for saying something insensitive, Julia said. Neo, who was watching everything unfold on Henry's laptop, was stunned. Why? Why have you even put a tail on her like that? Have some basic decency, will you? Neo said. I put someone to tail her because a certain dumbass told me 30 minutes ago to keep eyes on her, Henry replied without looking up. His tone was matter of fact, as if justifying his actions. And stop looking at me like I'm some criminal. Henry leaned back in his chair, his eyes still glued to the screen. It's not my fault that it just happened to be the day when her relationship is in danger, Henry added with a shrug. Neo opened his mouth to retort but quickly closed it, at a loss for words. He massaged his brows. Henry, unfazed, continued watching the drama unfold. His lips curled, betraying his amusement. While his gaze remained fixed on the screen, he spoke to Neo. Why did you tell me to keep an eye on these two? I went to the underworld, and they told me our family of 4 has been reincarnating for ages, he said instead of responding directly. Henry didn't seem shocked, much to Neo's surprise. He remained calm, almost indifferent, to the news. What about it? Henry asked. Mira and George are mom and dad's reincarnation, Neo said. Henry finally looked away from the screen. He looked at Neo, as if wondering he was joking. I'm serious. Oh. Henry looked back to the screen. At the drama he had been watching moments ago. Chapter 373 Drama. It suddenly didn't feel amusing anymore. Henry's expression darkened. He leaned forward and pressed a small switch embedded in the corner of his desk. A soft beep signaled the connection to Sebastian, his butler. Prepare a car, Henry ordered. As you wish, master, Sebastian replied promptly over the intercom. Henry turned off the switch and closed his laptop. Let's go, he said, rising from his chair. Go where? To solve this stupid misunderstanding, Henry replied as he grabbed his coat from the back of his chair. Misunderstanding? Yeah, Henry began as they made their way out of the office. That guy. Dad started to train seriously after the labyrinth incident. He got a personal coach. Neo's brows furrowed as he followed Henry down the grand staircase. Henry continued. The woman who came to his house was his trainer. Dad was seriously injured in training a few days ago. He didn't notice the injury until he returned home and couldn't go for the training the next day. The trainer came to his house to help him. She has a healing ability, Henry explained. Neo glanced at Henry, still trying to process the information. Why did he hide all of this? Neo asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Mira. Henry stumbled over his words. He quickly corrected himself. Mom made Dad promise that they would stop monster hunting. What? Neo frowned, stopping. Momentarily on the staircase. Henry turned back briefly. The labyrinth incident gave her mild trauma. She's been trying to stay away from anything related to mystical quantities. As they reached the foyer, Henry explained. I read the report from Myra's doctor. The Minotaur's attack that almost killed you, your effortless fight back, the hundreds of monsters pouring out of the window, the demigods being helpless against the monsters, and then you again fighting back effortlessly. Everything made her think that unless they're strong, their lives will always be in danger. That's why she tried to stop Dad from going anywhere near monsters. It was a normal response, Neo thought. Dad was also shaken by the incident. That's why he is training, even if that means going against Mom's wishes, Henry said. He must be feeling powerless after the labyrinth incident, Neo replied with a sigh. He remembered seeing demigods that day who had pale faces and were frozen in fear. George, Hades' reincarnation, had not been like them. He had been prepared to fight back. But in the end, he was too weak to defeat anything. If Neo had not stepped in and taken care of the monsters himself, leaving the job to the Templars who would arrive later, George and Mira would have been dead. You are right. Dad wants to do everything he can to make sure he doesn't feel powerless again. He's doing it to protect Mom, Henry said. They climbed into the car. The faint scent of new upholstery mixed with the lingering aroma of Henry's cologne. Neo buckled his seatbelt as the car began to move. How do you know all of this? Neo asked, glancing at Henry. I did my research when you told me to keep an eye on them, Henry replied in a voice tinged with irritation. It was only 30 minutes ago. Shut up, bitch. I'm already pissed. Don't annoy me more. Henry, clearly trying to distract himself, seemed lost in thought. He muttered something under his breath as his fingers drummed against the car door. He had been watching the drama earlier, waiting for the misunderstanding between Mira and George to resolve after dramatic quarrels. Everything was supposed to bring them closer, It was a sweet yet theatrical drama genre love story. But now, knowing that his parents were the ones at the center of this misunderstanding, Henry's realized a new truth. Drama genre is fucking trash, he mumbled suddenly. What are you talking about? Neo asked, frowning. Nothing, Henry replied curtly, leaning back in his seat. The car sped forward. Shadows of passing trees flickered against the windows. Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out a cigarette. He lit it with a flick of his lighter. He took a deep puff. Drive slowly, Neo said. A minute or two being late is better than driving like a maniac. We'll be too late, Henry said. Mom, Mira, is the type to bash Dad's head in after she finds out he's cheating. She shouted at her friend in the cafe. It's clear anger is slowly taking over her grief. And Dad is going to meet her in an hour. We need to be quick. You were enjoying something like that a few minutes ago. Neo did not say his thoughts out aloud. But Henry noticed his gaze. Bitch, why the fuck are you looking at me like that? Nothing, Neo replied, using Henry's own words against him. Henry clicked his tongue in irritation and refocused on the road ahead. The hum of the car engine filled the silence as they sped down the street. Few minutes passed as Neo kept glancing at Henry. Fucker, I was watching everything without interfering since I didn't know what you were planning to do, Henry said, his fingers tightening slightly around the steering wheel. You told me to keep an eye on them. Was I supposed to intrude and tell them that everything she saw was a misunderstanding? It would been a dictator if you were planning to use their misunderstanding. Don't shift the blame to me. You were still enjoying watching it, Neo retorted. Fuck you, Henry spat. Today, Henry decided he fucking hated drama genre. The car came to a halt at a red light. Henry drummed his fingers impatiently on the wheel. Why did Mom try to stop Dad from fighting monsters at all? She doesn't seem the type to step back when she's afraid, Neo suddenly asked, breaking the silence. After all, Mira was going to bash George's head in, according to Henry. She seemed quite courageous, to Neo. Because she was not worried about just Dad, but their kid too, Henry said, exhaling smoke from the cigarette hanging between his fingers. I see. She is worried about. Wait, what? Neo, who rarely liked showing so many reactions, couldn't hold back this time. We have a sibling. We're going to get one in a few months, Henry replied casually. She was planning to tell Dad the news after he proposed to her today. Neo finally understood why Henry was so concerned. Mira and George would reconcile after the misunderstanding was resolved. It would happen by the evening. But until then, Mira would remain in misery, crying over what she believed was betrayal. There was no way Henry would let his mom go through that agony for long. Fuck you, bastard, for enjoying watching a drama like this, Neo said. Well, shut up. You would have done the same in my situation. Neo massaged his brows. Does Dad has any idea that he is about to become a dad? Yes, he knows. That's why he wants to grow stronger. He wants to protect both Mom and their child. He's going to propose to her tonight and well, fuck, I hate myself for liking drama, Henry said, taking another puff from his cigarette. The light turned green, and the car moved forward again. Chapter 374 Different Choices. The car rolled to a gentle stop on the gravel driveway. They reached their destination fairly quickly. Before Henry could get out of the car, Neo opened his mouth. Wait a second. What is it? Henry paused mid-movement, his hand on the car door. Noticing the seriousness in Neo's expression, he hesitated and got back into his seat. Maybe we shouldn't meet them. It will be too shocking for them to find out they are reincarnations. Why? Henry's voice cut through Neo's ramblings. His dark eyes narrowed, scanning Neo's face for answers. Why are you afraid? I'm not. Neo stopped speaking with a sigh and closed his eyes. He leaned back into the soft leather seat. Life is really shit, isn't it? He suddenly said. Henry frowned. He stayed quiet, waiting for Neo to speak further. Neo tilted his head back, staring at the car's ceiling as if searching for answers. Our family is cursed. The closer we are to each other, the worse deaths we will face. Mom and Dad are about to have a kid. He paused for a few seconds. The curse should already be quite strong on them. If we try to make them our family, it won't end well. Henry didn't respond immediately. He didn't ask Neo where he had found such information, nor did he question its credibility. He trusted Neo enough to know he wouldn't spout nonsense about something so serious. They should already be dead, Neo said. His hands clenched into fists. I saved them by luck. But I can't guarantee I can do that again. Henry's expression darkened. What do you mean by that? Remember the labyrinth incident? They were supposed to die then. I met the Sphinx, and it told me how my interference changed the destined fate, Neo explained, mixing truth and lies. So, what are you planning to do? Don't tell me you're thinking we should stay away from them forever. No, of course not. Neo shook his head firmly. His lips pressed into a thin line as he stared out the window at the dimming sky. Dad was at least a stage 5 god, Neo continued. It seems like he wasn't strong enough to destroy the curse that is responsible for our family's reincarnations. All I have to do is be stronger than Dad, Henry interjected, completing Neo's sentence. Yes. Until then, we should stay away from them. And how much time do you think you need to surpass Dad? Henry questioned, tightening his grip around the steering wheel in frustration. The news Neo revealed was stabbing daggers into his heart. He was the ruler of the underworld, Neo. That isn't the level of strength you can reach anytime soon, Henry said. Neo bit his lips. He wanted to meet their parents just as much as Henry did. But we can't do it. Not unless we want them to die again. Neo clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms as he felt helplessness sink. You can sit here if you want to, Henry said abruptly, pushing the car door open. Where are you going? Neo asked. Going to meet Dad, and help him clear the misunderstanding with Mom. I just told you. We can't be a family, but we can be friends at least. Even acquaintances is fine, Henry said. Henry didn't immediately enter the training center visible in the distance. He stopped at the entrance, and turned back to look at Neo. You aren't coming to meet him. No, Neo said, shaking his head. Do as you wish, Henry replied, though a trace of disappointment lingered in his eyes. Neo watched as Henry entered the premises. The automatic doors slid shut behind him. Neo's fists clenched tighter. Henry was strong. Far stronger than Neo. That was why he was confident about meeting George, Hades' reincarnation. He knows he can protect Dad. But until when could Henry do that? And I'm sure he wants me to meet Dad too, but that would only strengthen the curse. Henry would handle the effects that would appear after his interference in their parents' lives. He would bear the burden of the curse brought by his presence. He told me to come with him since he was planning to handle the curse's effect brought by my presence too. But there is no way I can do that. Neo exhaled slowly. He was no longer a kid. He couldn't ignore the curse, not when he couldn't even handle the dangers that would appear after he entered the life of his parents' current reincarnation. Henry could, but not Neo. Life really is a sack of shit, Neo muttered. Closing his eyes for a moment, he activated the shadow jump spell. The shadows beneath him rippled. They pulled him in. It felt like falling into cold, endless water. He moved through the shadows, and when he opened his eyes again, he had reappeared inside the training center. The well-lit interior buzzed faintly with activity. The clinking of weights and muffled footsteps echoed in the vast, modern space. Rows of equipment gleamed under the bright fluorescent lights, and the faint scent of metal and sweat hung in the air. From afar, Neo spotted George. George was on the ground, bleeding. His breaths were shallow, and his face twisted in pain as blood stained the floor beneath him. He seemed to have received a powerful punch to the abdomen that knocked the air out of him, leaving him helpless. Even in such a state, his sharp features were visible clearly. Should we stop the training today? The female trainer asked worriedly. You have an important day today. It's better if we stop now. It's fine, George said, wiping the blood from his lips and standing up with effort. He tried to mask his pain with a weak smile. What's the point of training if I'm going to take a break every time I'm busy? His arms trembled from exhaustion. His legs wobbed slightly. Beads of sweat rolled down his face, and his chest heaved with labored breaths. He seemed to be on the verge of fainting, yet he had no intention of giving up. Chapter 375. Only 2% left. Damn it, Neo muttered under his breath. He left the building, not waiting to see how Henry would interact with George. The sight of George's pain only made his heart ache. No child wanted to see their parents suffering, especially like this. Damn it, damn it, damn it. He ran without direction. The city lights blurred past him, casting fleeting shadows. When he came to his senses, it was already night. The air was crisp and heavy with the faint scent of rain that lingered after a recent drizzle. He found himself walking alone on a deserted street. The dark sky stretched above him like an endless void. There was no moon. There hadn't been one for centuries, and the place was plunged into a suffocating darkness, broken only by the distant flicker of streetlights. Neo spread his intent senses, letting them unfurl like a web across the city. The taste of dumplings from a small stall on the other side of the city. The sight of vehicles moving along the highway. The hushed whispers of a half-asleep, half-awake person murmuring from their bed. Neo could sense everything that was happening within the city, down to the smallest detail. This was the power of a two-trait Empyrean demigod. If he tried, he could stretch his senses even farther, spanning hundreds of miles. That was how strong he was. And yet, it wasn't enough. His strength was never enough when he needed it. Sob. Sob. Neo flinched when the soft cries reached his ears. He froze, and his chest tightened painfully. They belonged to Mira. He didn't close his intent senses. He couldn't bring himself to. Instead, he listened. Each sob that escaped his mother's lips felt like a dagger plunging into his heart, twisting deeper with every second. Fuck, Neo muttered under his breath. His shoulders slumped, and his expression darkened. He sat down on a roadside bench. The cold metal pressed against him as he leaned backward. He stared at the dark, empty sky with a hollow and distant gaze. The flickering streetlight above him buzzed faintly, casting a pale, uneven glow that did little to brighten the gloom around him. Primogenitor. His lips moved almost mechanically. Tell me. He knew what he was about to do. He knew the answer he would receive would lock his primogenitor skills slot for any foreseeable future. The logical choice would have been to focus on smaller goals, to level up the skill. He should have tried to free other slots or evolve primogenitor before doing anything reckless, like locking all his progress with an impossible to complete task. But he wanted an answer. He needed confirmation that he could save his parents. How strong do I need to be to remove the curse that is the cause of mom and dad's reincarnations? Question detected. One slot of primogenitor skill is free. The modification request has been inserted into the slot. Please wait while we confirm the modification's feasibility. The pale light of the floating system screen flickered across Neo's face. This was the only way Neo knew to find an answer. His fingers twitched slightly, betraying his inner turmoil. If the skill couldn't find an answer, he didn't know what he would do. Please. Give me an answer. Work. Please. Help me for once. Each moment felt like an hour to Neo. He waited with bated breath. Ding. Answer found. You need to surpass the Death Element Stage 9 God rank and become a Nirvana Stage God to remove the curse of your bloodline. The words on the screen brought intense emotions along with them. Neo's heart clenched. A Paragon was as strong as a Stage -1 God. An Exalted was as strong as a Stage 2 God. The rank after Exalted would correspond to a Stage 3 God. And so on. Until finally, Stage 9 God. Henry had been right. Neo's goal was far, far beyond what he could currently reach. But even so, Neo didn't despair. His hands balled into fists. The light from the screen reflected a newfound determination in his eyes. He was longer weighed down by despair. Hope. He finally found it. There is a way to save them. That was all Neo needed to know. He would do it. No matter how long it took, no matter what stood in his way. As if sensing Neo's emotions, the system screen blinked to life again. Quest. Family. Completed. Reward. Nightmare Element. Level up, Empathic Control, X2. What? Neo's eyes widened in surprise. The system's notification disappeared, but Neo's senses sharpened instinctively. He spread his intent across the city, his awareness stretching far and wide. The cold night air carried the faint chatter of people and the aroma of street food. His focus zeroed in on Henry, who was leading their parents home. Henry seemed to have cleared the misunderstanding. How much time passed while I was lost in thought? Neo muttered to himself. Time had long lost its meaning for Neo. A year for others felt like a day to Neo. His perception of time had shifted drastically after living a long life. What he had thought was a few moments lost in thoughts, had been hours in reality. A bitter chuckle escaped his lips. He didn't know how to feel about this realization. Well, I should look at this, he muttered, bringing up his system screen once more. Empathic Bond. Grade 1 Empyrean. Progress. 98%. It's about to rank up, Neo said. The skill was only a bit away from evolving again. Neo could finally reach Paragon rank. He stood up from the cold metal bench. He walked to the main streets. People bustled through, their faces illuminated by the neon lights of shops and advertisements. Vehicles zipped past, their headlights creating fleeting beams of light in the darkness. Neo's gaze swept over the crowd. He knew what he had to do. Since I can use this skill, unlike Primogenitor, it shouldn't take more than a few days to reach 100% progress. This is a lot better. His gaze grew determined. If Empathic Bond surpasses Primogenitor, the link lock will activate, and Primogenitor's progress will go up too. Neo observed the bustling cityscape. The streets were crowded, filled with people going about their lives. There's no lack of targets to use my skill upon. He entered the crowd and used his skill on the nearest unsuspecting person. Emotions surged. Chapter 376 Late Awakening. Emotions surged. Neo kept his presence suppressed, which kept him hidden from the man. The man looked to be in his late 40s. His shoulders were slumped. He had dark circles beneath his eyes, and his tie was loosened, hanging awkwardly over a wrinkled shirt. He walked back to his home, with his worn office bag in his hands. His steps were heavy, dragging behind him. Neo stopped his skill. He pulled back the tide of emotions he had been ready to inject into the man. If I'm going to do it, might as well do it properly, he thought. He extended his hand subtly and activated mind invasion to look into the man's mind. Flashes of a bright childhood surfaced in Neo's mind. The man had once been a top-performing student. He turned from a genius into an average person as he grew older. No, as he grew up, he realized he wasn't a genius. He wasn't special. The face of hammered further as the man passed the age of 20 without awakening godblood. He would never become a demigod. Awakening past the age of 20 was almost unheard of. There were exceptions, of course, rare cases where individuals awakened after 20. These outliers were monstrous geniuses. It was said their godblood was so powerful that their bodies and souls couldn't handle the strain of their awakening until maturity. Their dormant powers only awakened after their bodies and souls had reached their peak. That is a few years after the age of 20. The man had hoped, once, that he might be one of those rare cases. But deep down, he knew better. It was normal for someone like him to remain unawakened. Only 1 in 10,000 people awakened, and late awakenings were even rarer, a 1 in a billion occurrence. His life trudged on. He graduated from a local university, earned a certification, and landed a job with an average income and a slightly toxic work environment. He couldn't change jobs due to his limited skills. 5 years later, he got married. 4 years after that, he had a child. The memory recollection ended. The man continued his slow journey home. He wanted to rest, but he never stopped moving, not because he had purpose but because stopping felt pointless. He was exhausted, but he didn't complain. His mind, dulled from years of exploitation, had no intentions of changing the flow of his life. An average life, in other words, Neo muttered. He used empathic bond and transferred hope, passion, and optimism. The man's feet came to a halt. The bustling noises of the city seemed to quieten for a moment as he blinked, confused, and looked around. The dullness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a faint sparkle. He felt as if he had just woken from a long, dreamless sleep. Neo observed him silently, suppressing his presence so thoroughly that the man remained unaware of his watcher. Yawn, when did I reach here? The man muttered to himself. He rubbed the back of his neck and glanced in the direction of his home. The tired lines on his face eased slightly. But instead of continuing his walk home, he returned to the main road. His gaze lingered on a row of small food stalls. I remember Olivia and Ava saying they wanted to eat out today. I completely forgot about it. He looked at his watch. The shops will be closed by the time I go home and return with them. I guess I'll take something good home today, he murmured with a faint smile, his voice tinged with affection. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out his device. His tired expression softened further. He quickly typed a message to his wife, Olivia. Less than I will bring a takeout, no need to cook. Greater than. A reply came almost instantly. Less than got it. Heart greater than. The man chuckled. The reply must have been sent by his daughter Ava. Well, takeout it is today. Although tired, he headed toward the food stalls with a smile. Neo remained motionless. He watched the man's figure grow smaller as he disappeared into the lively crowd. That was. Neo stopped speaking and shook his head. He focused on inwards in an attempt to distract himself. His body was evolving even at this moment. The rank up from grade 3 to grade 1 in emphatic bond had triggered 2 breakthroughs. Every cell in his body was being torn apart repeatedly. His mastery over his life element allowed him to heal himself almost instantly. At the same time, he absorbed the excess energy from the breakthrough with his darkness element. Thanks to his masterful control, Neo could go through the breakthrough right in the middle of the road without losing focus on his surroundings, or his task. Emphatic bond, grade 1. Progress. 98% right pointing arrow 98.01%. I guess I need to use the skill on someone else for a better increase. Neo muttered to himself. He had never used the skill much, which was why he was unaware of such a basic rule until now. The man was an unawakened, so it was easy to influence his emotions. By that logic, I would find it difficult to influence the emotions of high-rank demigods. They should give me good progress if I use the skill on them, he muttered. The powerful demigods he could target for his skills were. Veldora can be a candidate, Neo thought, but he returned to the underworld quite a while back. Should I go meet him? As Neo drowned in his thoughts, a screen sprang before him. Use your skill on Elizabeth. With her strength, just one successful activation of your skill will help it reach its peak. What? Neo frowned. I'm not using my skill on. She is having nightmares every day. You can help her with your skill, and it's beneficial to your progress too. But, you are the reason why she is injured, Neo Hargraves. You used her, and now you don't want to take responsibility. The Sphinx's replies came fast, cutting Neo off mid-sentence. Chapter 377 The Tyrant's Past. Her words made sense, unfortunately. Fine, Neo said, clicking his tongue. He activated Shadow Jump and vanished from the street. Minutes later, Neo appeared at the academy. He made his way quickly to Elizabeth's room. Since the academy had defense measures against exalted demigods, he couldn't rely on his paragon-ranked strength to sneak in undetected. He had to move normally. The guard at the gates allowed him entry after realizing Neo's identity. Upon reaching Elizabeth's room, he noticed Amelia was absent. The dim light from a bedside lamp bathed the room in a soft glow, and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor filled the silence. Seems like the Sphinx chose this timing because Amelia was away, Neo muttered. The news brought him relief. Although he didn't fully understand why, he didn't want to face Amelia. He approached Elizabeth's hospital bed. Her face was pale, framed by strands of hair that clung to her forehead. Her chest rose and fell steadily. Her furrowed brows revealed her restless state. Neo pulled a chair close and sat down beside her. Mind invasion. Neo flinched as his skill failed to activate. It was bounded back by a powerful barrier protecting Elizabeth's mind. What was that? Neo muttered as he opened his eyes. His breaths were shallow and uneven. If he had been a second late in deactivating his skill, he would have been hit by a mental attack. She has a mind shield and a counterattack prepared in case someone tries to peek into her mind. Neo's brows furrowed. Thinking logically, any exalted demigod, the peak of strength on Luminera, would have long prepared such countermeasures. I guess you don't reach exalted rank without being cautious. He closed his eyes and tried to use the skill again. The result was the same. Beads of sweat rolled down Neo's neck. Seconds turned into minutes. He kept trying. Thanks to his quick reflexes, he managed to evade the counterattacks, but every attempt was a walk on a thin line. Exalted demigods are monsters, all right. I can't breach her mental defense at all. He took another long look at Elizabeth. Should I use emphatic bond as it is? He wasn't sure if the skill would work in this state. Still, there was no harm in trying. He reached out and grabbed her hand once more. Her fingers felt cold against his palm. With a deep breath, Neo activated emphatic bond. His emotions surged, attempting to seep into Elizabeth's subconscious. He was successful. Why did it work this time? Neo's words were abruptly cut short. Elizabeth's mental defense roared to life and caught him. He realized too late that the absence of the defense earlier had been a trap. A subconscious attempt by Elizabeth. Elizabeth's unconscious mind pressed on his soul from all sides. Neo's soul form started to flicker under the pressure. Damn it. Why is she so powerful? Despite having a powerful soul form, he found himself struggling. His soul was being crushed. He tried to call back his soul form, but Elizabeth's mental defenses refused to let him escape. I need to do something. Neo tried to think of a solution. He recalled Sphinx's words. One phrase in particular echoed in his mind. Elizabeth is having nightmares. Are you telling me she is attacking me unconsciously, due to nightmares? The realization leaving him dumbstruck. But there was no time to stay dazed. There has to be something, he thought. Death from having his soul torn apart was painful, even for him. Neo was no masochist and he didn't enjoy suffering from pain. If he could, he wanted a painless solution. Fuck, there is no way out. Might as well face it headfirst. Mind invasion. Neo activated his skill, hoping to use it with emphatic bond to calm Elizabeth. Maybe then, she would stop attacking him. As he was already inside her, the mental defenses couldn't block him. The skill activated and the scene around Neo's soul form changed. He appeared in a luxurious room with grand furniture, though the atmosphere was anything but serene. A girl, thin and bruised, cowered in the corner of the room. She seemed barely 12 years old. Tears streamed down her face as a man, older than her by at least 2 decades, stood over her. The man's face was contorted in rage. Why the hell are you so irritating? The man barked, each word followed by the harsh impact of his boot against her body. I'm so. Shut up, he roared, cutting her off. Neos clenched his jaws and tried to move. But he couldn't. The scene around him shifted abruptly. He now stood in an old, dilapidated room. Dust coated the tattered sheets, and the broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. The air was stale. The girl, now a few years older, sat alone, her face illuminated by the dim glow of a screen. She seemed to watching a princess show on the television. Her eyes were hollow, yet a smile adorned her face. Suddenly, the door was smashed open with a loud crash. She flinched. A man stormed inside, reeking of alcohol. Neo's stomach churned. The girl in these memories was Elizabeth, and the man was her ex-husband. Neo tried to move and intervene. But his body remained frozen. It was then that he felt it. A foreign power, holding him down. Elizabeth's mental defenses had recognized him as an intruder and were preventing him from interfering with her memories. The strain was unbearable. It was taking all of Neo's strength to keep his soul form from being crushed under the weight of Elizabeth's subconscious will. The scene changed again. Neo found himself in the same room, the man missing. Suddenly, a crisp slap rang out. Elizabeth, who had reached the end of her teenage years and matured into a beauty, had an indignant expression despite being slapped. A woman, bearing a striking resemblance to Elizabeth's now ex-husband but much older, glared at Elizabeth. What did you say? The older woman hissed. No, Elizabeth replied. How dare you refuse? The woman shrieked, her hand swinging through the air once more. The slap, brutal, left Elizabeth's cheek flushed red and swollen. A thin trail of blood trickled down the corner of her lips. Neo's fists clenched as he watched helplessly. Elizabeth wasn't awakened at this time, and the slaps of her mother-in-law, an awakened demigod, carried enough force to inflict excruciating pain. You have been married for 8 years. You still haven't had a kid. People are saying Elric is impotent. The woman shouted. She grabbed Elizabeth's hair with one hand and pulled roughly. They are right, Elizabeth replied. After years of enduring relentless abuse, she realized that no matter how much she begged, she would still be hit. Her pleas had always fallen on deaf ears. Until now, she kept her mouth shut as the Darkwolf family supported her country. But today, forget a child, I'm never going to let that bastard touch me. Be bastard. How dare you call my son that word? What about it? That guy is an impotent bastard. Everyone knows it. Young, cornered, and overwhelmed by years of resentment, Elizabeth spoke without restraint. The older woman lost her temper completely. Chapter 378 The Tyrant's Past 2. She slapped Elizabeth with all her strength. The impact sent Elizabeth flying. Her body slammed into a nearby chair, toppling it over. The sharp sound of splintering wood echoed in the room. Elizabeth's cheek was torn open, and a portion of her skin was ripped away, leaving raw flesh exposed. Blood dripped down her face, staining the floor. Instead of crying in pain, she raised her head and glared at the woman. The woman flinched. You bitch. The woman raised her hand to hit her again, but stopped. She could see it. Elizabeth would rather die than listen to her. The woman's face twisted. She took a step back, her voice trembling as she barked. Use this to heal yourself. We can't have you looking like a monster with that face at today's party. She pulled a weak healing potion and a small book from her spatial inventory and threw them at Elizabeth. The bottle rolled on the floor, stopping near Elizabeth's legs. Without another word, the woman turned and left the room. After the sound of her high-heeled shoes faded into the distance, Elizabeth lowered her gaze. Tears slipped from her eyes. She touched her torn cheek with trembling hands and the scene changed. The blood stains on the floor had dried. Elizabeth's face was wrapped in bandages, stained with faint traces of blood that had seeped through. The healing potion the woman gave her was a weak one, designed to work slowly over time. Elizabeth couldn't use stronger healing potions. She wasn't a demigod. Her body would be overloaded by the divine energy in them. It would cause her to explode. Elizabeth was busy reading the book the woman, her mother-in-law, had given her along with the weak healing potion. Quote. Neo, although frozen and unable to move, could see the content of the book. He clenched his jaws due to the overwhelming pressure of Elizabeth's subconscious mind crushing him and read the book. It was a spell for childbirth. That contained a detailed method for creating life through magic. The man and the woman would tear a portion of their souls and fuse them along with their divine energy. This process would create an embryo that could then be nurtured and developed in specialized hospital chambers until it grew into a child. The entire process, the book claimed, would take only a few months. This spell, Neo knew about it. It was how children had been born for centuries since long ago. Thanks to it, women no longer needed to carry children in their bellies for 9 months, and labor pains had become a relic of the past. Intercourse had long since ceased to be necessary for reproduction. This was the spell I helped Gaia create during the apocalypse, Neo thought. Back then, childbirth had become nearly impossible with normal methods. The scene shifted abruptly again. Why haven't you used the spell? The mother-in-laws glared at Elizabeth. I have not awakened my god blood. I can't use spells, Elizabeth said, giving a genuine reason, but an excuse. Nonetheless, you bitch. The woman raised her hand. However, her hand froze midair when she noticed the look in Elizabeth's eyes. Elizabeth wasn't afraid. The mother-in-law lowered her hand and spat. You either awaken and use the spell, or you do it the natural way with Elric. How? Elizabeth scoffed. He can't even get it up. Both of us know he hasn't touched you because he prefers the other gender, not because he can't do it with you. The woman's words made Elizabeth freeze in fear. If I give him an ultimatum, he'll do it with you. So, make your choice. Before the woman could leave, the Elizabeth spoke through gritted teeth. As a child so necessary that. A child is necessary. Ours is a world that stands of bloodline, the woman spoke coldly. We bought you because of your bloodline. Now do your work. The scene shifted once more. Elizabeth stood next to a cradle. Judging by Elizabeth's appearance, 2 or 3 years seemed to have passed. Inside the cradle, a child barely a month old slept soundly. Elizabeth maintained an expressionless face. However, her eyes revealed her true emotions as she stared at the child. Disgust. It's just a spell-born child, Elizabeth muttered, as if she was trying to reassure herself. The child, inside the cradle, remained utterly oblivious to Elizabeth's emotions. Neo, his soul form flickering in and out of existence, observed from the corner of the room. He noticed the changed air around Elizabeth. It was an unmistakable sign. She awakened her godblood. She awakened when she was almost 21. In other words, a late awakening. It means she had a sky-high talent. That explains how she became the youngest exalted demigod in the history. His gaze shifted to the child. Seems like she used the spell for childbirth. Neo's thoughts came to an abrupt halt when he saw what was happening. Elizabeth moved her hands. She reached into the cradle and grabbed the child's neck. I hate you. Hatred, sorrow, regret, and confusion. Her emotions crashed against each other. Elizabeth's gaze was locked on the child. She knew, deep down, the child had done nothing wrong. It hadn't asked to be born, much less under these circumstances. But the sight of it, the tiny being lying there so innocently, only made her hatred boil over. Her lips quivered as tears began to streak down her face. She hated herself for feeling this way. Finally, after what felt like hours, Elizabeth's grip loosened. She took a step back from the cradle. Her shoulders shook with suppressed sobs as she turned her gaze away, unable to look at the child any longer. The scene changed. A few months seemed to have passed. The once dimly lit room was now brighter. Warm glow of daylight streamed through the open window and a faint scent of lavender wafting through the air. The room was properly taken care of, unlike before. The biggest change, however, was in Elizabeth. She sat beside the cradle. Her eyes were filled with tenderness as she played with the child. She decided to not hate the child for what happened, Neo realized. Judging by how Elizabeth flinched every time the child laughed and tried to grab her fingers, he could tell that Elizabeth still found it difficult to forget everything. However, she was trying her best to be a mother. Chapter 379 Skill Empathic Bond and Primogenitor Mastered. The scene changed. Another spell-born child appeared next to Elizabeth while the firstborn had grown into a cute girl. Clara and Paul, Neo thought. The scenes began to shift quickly. Neo's vision blurred for a moment before sharpening again. He saw multiple events unfolding before him. Elizabeth's abnormal growth speed shocked her in-law family. The obvious proof of her talent brought malice. The in-laws were worried she would try to take revenge if she grew any more stronger. But her husband and others had no choice than to let her go when she reached Empyrean rank. Empyrean rank in 5 years after she awakened. That speed is far higher than the main caste, Neo thought. It's no wonder the in-laws tried to kill her before she got too strong. Normally, It took 30 to 50 years to reach the Empyrean rank. This was with proper teaching and resources, something Elizabeth never received. Neo's surprise only increased as he watched the next scenes. Elizabeth was returning to her country after the divorce. The ship she traveled on creaked under the weight of the crashing waves. Dark clouds loomed overhead, and the salty scent of the ocean filled the air. Suddenly, pirates attacked. Their leader, a washed-up exalted demigod injured during a Blood Sea expedition, stepped forward. His rugged appearance and menacing aura sent shivers down the spines of the crew. Despite his injuries, he was far stronger than Elizabeth. But just as all seemed lost, her twin sister appeared at the last second. A dazzling light burst forth as she descended from the skies. She made quick work of the pirates and left as quickly as she arrived. She left the replica of the trident of Poseidon and her daughter, Amelia, into Elizabeth's care before she disappeared, saying some very powerful enemies were chasing her. The meeting with her sister was shocking. It made Elizabeth realize something. Elizabeth was weak. She couldn't protect herself, her country, or her children if she remained like that. She needed to be stronger. Elizabeth drowned herself in work after she returned to her country. When she wasn't training or handling the country's administration, she was playing with her children. Their laughter was the only respite from her exhausting routine. As time passed, her reputation took a turn for the worse. Tyrant, they called her. But it was fine. Her children still loved her. Their affection became her support. Unbeknownst to her, a curse had been placed on her. It remained dormant until one day it suddenly surged and nearly claimed her life. If not for her ascension to peak exalted rank, she would have died helplessly. Elizabeth's journey from grade 5 awakened to grade 1 exalted took roughly 10 years. It took others centuries to do the same. She became known as the youngest person to become exalted demigod. Her accomplishments shook the continent to its core. However, combined with her tarnished reputation, it only brought more enemies to her doorstep. Elizabeth had no time for such rumors. She was too busy staving off the curse. It will be fine. As long as this time passes, we can finally have our happy family, she whispered to herself. The rebellion occurred. Her children were trying to kill her. Ha, ha. Elizabeth, sitting on a chair within her room, felt like stones were being pushed into her lungs every time she took a breath. Her trembling hands clutched the armrests. She did not have much time left. Was this how she was going to die? Alone, betrayed and cursed by her children, mocked by her people. A fitting end for a tyrant, she thought. Neo clenched his jaw as he watched the scene unfolding before his eyes. In a few minutes, Paul, Elizabeth's son, would enter the room. Neo knew it as he had experienced the scene himself. Damn it. Neo's translucent soul was barely holding together. He was about to shatter. But his mind was focused on something else. He had not been able to help Elizabeth at all. Don't fuck with me, Neo thought, gritting his teeth. His soul form flickered violently. Since he was going to die, he would do it of his own choice. By using his last moments to help Elizabeth. Hey, Neo called out, forcing his body to move. How are you? As if suddenly aware of his presence, Elizabeth turned to him. Her dull, red eyes struggled to focus. Her expression was a mix of confusion and faint recognition. Who are you? She asked. She doesn't recognize me in dreams, Neo realized. It was probably due to how Neo looked. A half-translucent, half-flickering figure of light. It's a good opportunity, he thought. His lips curled into a faint, determined smile, despite the pain he was going through. I'm your guardian fairy, he said. But you sound like a man, Elizabeth muttered. I thought fairies were female. Her mind must have been in too much chaos and pain if she was starting to make jokes. Or the curse was starting to affect her mind and gnawing at her sanity. But, she continued, I think I remember seeing you when I was a kid and when. Elizabeth stopped speaking. Talking was taking a huge toll on her. She tried to open her eyes forcefully to see how her guardian fairy looked. He appeared as a humanoid form of light, flickering and incomplete. A light that was apparently a fairy but sounded like a man for some reason. Elizabeth chuckled. The dim light from the candle on the nearby table cast flickering shadows across her gaunt face, making her smile seem both weary and bittersweet. Are you here to tell me it's my time to die? She asked. No. The light. Neo kneeled before her and held her hands gently. Moving and physically touching Elizabeth increased the pressure, crushing him by 100 folds. It's not your time to die, he said, trying to hold himself together for as long as possible. Why not? She took a labored breath before continuing. I'm not going to live more than a few hours. You will live. Can you promise me that, guardian fairy? Yes. Perhaps sensing the absolute certainty in the fairy's words, Elizabeth smiled. The dream froze and the world turned black. What happened? Neo's words were cut off and his soul form shattered. He woke up in his physical body, drenched in sweat. I'm alive. He looked at his trembling hands. Seems like damage to the soul form isn't the same as death. Ugh. He winced and grabbed his head. The dull throb quickly escalated into searing pain. He felt as if his mind was being torn apart and stabbed with needles. Empathic bond. Grade 1 progress. 98% right pointing arrow 100% empathic bond has been mastered. 4 evolution pathways unlocked. More screens appeared, their light illuminating the dark room briefly. Primogenitor. Grade 1. Progress. 98% right pointing arrow 100% primogenitor has been mastered. 4 evolution pathways unlocked. Neo frowned. The skill progress increased. Does this mean I was able to influence her emotions? He tried to ignore the pounding headache and looked over at Elizabeth with his skill. Her mental defenses protected her mind, but they no longer attacked him aggressively like before. Seems like her nightmare stopped, he thought. His gaze softened as he observed her sleeping form. Chapter 380 Evolution Pathways of Empathic Bond and Primogenitor. The faint rise and fall of her chest brought a fleeting sense of relief. He closed his eyes, recalling his promise. You will live. While he was drowned in thoughts, space elementals churned behind him. The air shimmered and twisted as a portal formed, casting a faint silver glow around the room. The principal's doll emerged from within. The doll's porcelain face remained expressionless as it bowed. Neo Hargraves, we have been ordered by the master to guide you towards a training room. You can complete your breakthrough there. Ellipsis. Elizabeth's dream space. In an empty dark voice, a figure with ash-white hair and blood red eyes sat with her knees huddled close to her chest. Her eyes were closed and she seemed to be in a deep sleep. The nightmares she had been haunted by for days had suddenly stopped. Thanks to it, she had a serene expression. Guardian fairy, she mumbled in sleep. In her memories, she could see a guardian fairy watching over her throughout her life. When she was a child, when she used to cry, when she felt lonely, when she felt helpless. She had never been alone like she used to believe. The guardian fairy was always with her. Ellipsis. Demigod Academy. Okay. Neo stood up. He took one last look at Elizabeth before following the dolls through the portal. The swirling energy enveloped him, and in an instant, he was transported to a large, empty training hall. The room was imposing, with thick black walls that absorbed sound and seemed almost indestructible. The faint hum of magical wards in the air hinted at the precautions taken to secure the space. Sphinx must have told the principal to prepare the place for me. I need to find a way to hide my status screen from that bastard. Or else, it will always know about my progress. Neo cleansed his thoughts, taking a deep breath to center himself. He sat in a meditative position and willed for his status to appear. Empathic Bond Evolution Pathways. 1. Empathic Echo. The user can leave a lasting imprint of an emotions or thoughts on others, creating a echo that influences their behavior long after the bond is severed. This can be used to inspire courage, instill fear, or plant subtle suggestions. Can be stacked 3 times. 2. Empathic Veil. The user can create a special bond with allies, and use their bond to mask their own or their allies' emotions, making them undetectable to empathic or mind-reading abilities. This can also extend to hiding their presence from magical or spiritual detection. Max Bond. 3. Empathic Transcendence. The empathic bond evolves to a level where the user can connect with non-human entities, such as animals, spirits, or even the environment itself. This could allow the MC to communicate with nature, summon spiritual allies, or harness the power of the world around them. 4. Soulbound Covenant. The user can form oaths. Breaking the covenant would have severe consequences. Max. 5. Neo was mildly surprised. All skills were top tier. Empathic Echo would allow him to alter a person's thoughts sneakily. There was no need to mention how useful that was. As for Empathic Veil, he didn't need its mind-protecting ability, but the ability to hide presence was a huge bonus. It could be invaluable for stealth missions or evading detection. Empathic Transcendence was a bust for the most part. Neo rubbed his chin thoughtfully, glancing at the skill descriptions floating before him. He could roughly communicate with animals and spirits with his intent. It was the last portion of the skill description that intrigued him. What does environment mean here? Neo wondered. Does it mean I can talk with elementals if I use this skill? If it was true, then this skill was tremendously powerful. No one could use affinities except the ones they were born with. Neo could get extra affinities from the system and true darkness. However, he wouldn't know what and when the system rewards would come, and extraction with true darkness depended on luck. People can't communicate with other elementals except the ones they have affinity with. 0. I think I can do that if I take this skill. It would allow Neo to use all elements as long as he could form a good relationship with the elementals. It was risky, but powerful. Soul Bond Covenant is also useful, he thought. I won't need to worry about someone backing away from their words if I use this skill. Neo withheld making any decisions for the moment and turned his attention to the evolution pathways for Primogenitor. Primogenitor evolution pathways. 1. Swords Master. Amplifies the user's swordsmanship to unparalleled levels, increasing both their innate talent and comprehension of sword techniques by 1000%. 2. Crownless King. A ruler without a throne, this trait symbolizes unyielding authority and transforms loyalty into strength. For every person who pledges their loyalty to you, a portion of their abilities becomes yours to wield. 3. Warmonger. A temporary boost 0.01% in abilities for every additional enemy faced alone. Stackable. 4. Battleborn. Permanently increasing all of the user's abilities, including talents and masteries by 0.01%, for every enemy they defeat who is equal to or stronger than themselves. Neo looked at the skill descriptions. Swordmaster is simple. It does just as the name says and it's powerful. The skill would help him refine his combat abilities. He lowered his gaze and looked at the Crownless King trait. I can get abilities from those who vow their loyalty to me. This sounds overpowered, but questions immediately sprang to mind. How many people can I bond to? How much abilities can I get from them? 1% or 100%? What if they aren't loyal to me or if they betray me? Would I get a backlash? There were too many unknowns. Neo furrowed his brow. The skill description didn't mention the number of people who could pledge him their loyalty. Maybe I could use this skill with an infinite number of people. If that were true, it would be an unparalleled ability. Even if I only got 0.001% of abilities from every target, it would still be incredible. Just the Luminera continent has trillions of people. Using the skill on even half of them would make me infinitely stronger than I am now. Neo's gaze shifted to the next skill. Warmonger. Its description is also pretty self-explanatory. I get stronger the more enemies I face at once. He frowned. But the boost is only temporary. The fourth trait drew his attention next. It was similar to Warmonger but had a more specific condition. It needs me to defeat opponents who are as strong as me or stronger, and I can increase my talent, masteries, and stats. It's not easy to defeat enemies like that. While this skill sounded simple and strong, using it on the field would be difficult and time-consuming. The faint hum of the magical interface persisted as he sat in silent contemplation, the glow of the descriptions illuminating the determination etched onto his face. Ellipsis.